Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot.
What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. 9 years ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we got a story that none of us really knew we needed. Rogue One filled in a portion of the Star Wars story that had hitherto been the territory of obsessive geeks and the dusty regions of George Lucas's mind. Now we have reached the culmination of what Rogue One spawned, which is the spawning of the spawning, if you're keeping track at home. The story of Cassian Andor and the beginnings of the rebellion that we all learned about as kids, starting with A New Hope. So we're going to talk about it all in this episode 206, because as we all know, rebellions and podcasts are built on hope. I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is the man who can now add survived a dust storm to his resume. He has been my partner in idiocy for over 2 decades and would never let a little thing like some dust interfere with his steak consumption. I give you the man they call Tim.
Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry because they love him in London and Paris and Tokyo, America, Scotland and Canada and Mexico. They say, I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. Greetings and salutations, sir. How are you?
I'm doing much better.
Should I keep
now.
going? Should I go wave your hands from side to side?
No, I think we're good. I think we're good. We've peaked.
Did I throw you?
I was not, I was not expecting Joe Henry, but then again, he's a lot like the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects it. But say his name and he appears.
Like Candyman or the Tax Man. I don't know.
One or the other. How are you, sir? How are you?
I'm doing well. And yourself, sir?
I am doing well. I am energized. I am excited. I have been waiting to talk about this for quite some time.
By my count, you probably have about 8 or 9 hours before you have to be in an office. So
8 or 9 hours until I have to get up to head to said office. But yes.
Oh, is that it? I thought you actually had to be there at that time. Never mind then. Unless
Not at all.
We've got a 3-hour show in us here.
Oh, good God. No, I'm tapping out at a certain point here. Sorry.
No. That's not the arrangement. That's not the arrangement. All right. Well, we are going to delve into
my arrangements.
Actually, Ava Goda is going to make an appearance here when we're talking about Andor. But we're talking about Andor season 2 in this episode, and this was a fracking journey here, man. So as we all know, this was released in 3 episode chunks, each representing a year. I got woefully behind right from the outset, and had only watched a total of 4 episodes. And we wanted to do this show this week because it makes sense. Like, this is a first recording after the release of the last arc. I binged 7 episodes of Andor on Friday night.
God bless you. God bless you.
And I was close, man. I thought I could push it through to the last one, and I was like, no, I can't, because it's going to be emotional, and I'm going to be a zombie. So I did 7 Friday night and then did the final one Saturday night in order to complete season 2.
Yeah.
Every other friggin' streaming show now is like 6 to 8 episods. Andor is like, nah, we're gonna give you 12. I'm like, son of a bitch. Of course, this is gonna catch me unawares.
And yet you fell short.
I did, but no, I fell short in terms of pacing myself. But
I didn't watch Rogue One.
Oh my gosh. I've watched Rogue One about a half dozen times. I think I'm okay.
Oh my God, it takes a whole new.
Don't you sigh at me, you son of a bitch. My Star Wars bona fides are in order, all right? Don't give me that crap.
Papers.
God.
Where are your papers?
All of a sudden, I'm dealing with the friggin' Star Wars Gestapo over here.
Oh, jeez.
Jeez, talk about gatekeepers.
Say his name and he appears.
He's Johnny Ringo over here trying to put a blaster, take out my left butt cheek with that one. That's great.
Oh my God! I don't think I aim for the left butt cheek.
Well, I don't know. I thought you'd be being nice to me. I like to sit. I like to sit to my right. So, anyways, so we're going to talk about Andor season 2, kind of our review and go through all this thing. But since he's making a big thing out of this and a big to do, how about you lead us through this? How do you want to parse this discussion? Because you had to come up with the outline.
I did,
because I had no clue what the hell was even going to be on the outline until Saturday night.
Well, let's start out this way. So this season, very different from other. I mean, I don't even want to say like Star Wars shows. I think in general, a 3-episode batch release every week is different. It really liked how by doing it this way, they were encompassing a year of time. The 3 episodes didn't span a year. It was just in between storytelling segments that these 3 episodes represented.
Yes.
A year had gone by, and it's meant to represent critical events in that short period of time, that we get it's an aperture, if you will, into a moment in time for these characters.
Yes,
so
a sphincter, if you will.
Indeed. And so I thought it was apropos the way it was done, and it was very skillfully done. I don't know that I would have I'll say I preferred that they just did 1 episode releases for 12 weeks. I like that we got 3 at a time. I liked that they were related. It's something I liked about season 1, because they essentially did the same thing. Just, the 3 episode segments weren't separated by a year of time. It was just, kind of events flowing into, further events. And so, so we'll start with the episode breakdown. So episode 1 through 3.
Actually, can we talk a little bit about can we just talk about the mechanics of this a little bit? Do you mind?
Sure.
Because I'm curious.
I love how you ask me how we're going to go through this. So I start and you're like, I want to do this.
Well, but no, because I think it's interesting.
You should have just started.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know what you wanted. I didn't want to screw up your arrangements.
And here we are.
Honestly, this is the story of our friendship right here in a nutshell.
Podcasts are built on hope. Hope that it doesn't break the friendship up. Please, sir, start with the mechanics.
But it is interesting when you put it that way. I wonder if you could build a show this way long term or in any kind of cohesive way, if you didn't already know where it was going to end. Like if you didn't have an ending point that you're kind of already aiming at, specifically season 2, where it's like each one represents like a significant event, and then it's like 1 year later is the next arc.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff in between there that isn't covered. There's a lot of threads that are left hanging in between there that you may or may not learn about, but you ultimately know, like, okay, this is going to lead to this, and then that connects to this and this, and therefore it's like, it's not just a prequel, it's a prequel that you're like, oh no, this is going to lead up to moments or days before this next thing. And I think it works really well because of that. And they were kind of using that as a way to, like, in a way, not, I don't want to say bore you, but it was like, it's that I think it's Alfred Hitchcock who said basically drama is real life, just with the boring parts edited out. Like, these are here are the important things, and we don't have to bore you with all the other stuff that happened, because essentially when you break this down, you're really getting like almost 4-ish movies. You're getting a movie each week.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take out end credits and all that stuff, and the last time on Andor, you add that all together, you're like 2.5, 3 hours. It's kind of remarkable when you realize that, like, oh shoot, they just released not just they released a trilogy plus one, you know. But I wonder if you think that would this work in other circumstances? Are we going to see copycats falling flat on their face trying to do something like this? And it's just like, no, this worked for this story, and it's not going to work for everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two things. One, and this is something that I know the show, and I'm dating myself a little bit. I can't even believe like it's probably close to it's 21 years of 21 years ago Lost premieres, and Lost was a show that suffered from this a little bit because the writers had an idea of where they wanted to take it. They didn't know how much leash they were going to be given by the network, and so they were kind of careful how they navigated that. And then once they had once the show had been established and they had some bargaining power, it sounded like they basically said, look, we want to finish this in 6 seasons. Like this is the only way this is going to work. And so by defining an endpoint, I think it actually helped the show, kind of end on a strong note, as opposed to just continually going and going and going until it loses all steam and no one cares. And I think, a good example of that is The Walking Dead. I think, The Walking Dead was making good progress through the stories that had been established in the comics for those who read them. I mean, I have not read the Walking Dead comics. I've not read one page of them, but I have read synopsis of storylines that informed, kind of where the series was going for me. But it was a series that lost steam because it just kept going. I mean, they went like close to 13 seasons, I think, or something like that. It was like 12 or 13. And so, and it kind of got to, and this is a show that had phenomenal writing, that had very what I felt was Emmy worthy episodes in terms of not just the story but the drama and the dialogue and everything with the characters. But yet over time, but something plays for long enough, you start to, I think, identify patterns. You start to kind of see
you're going to repeat yourself for sure.
Yeah, you just start to see through the story doesn't hold the same weight. Like what worked, what was a strong story in season 2 felt overplayed in season 11. And so so I think the way they approach this, where we were given this snapshot into a segment in time of this year, I thought was very interesting. I know they wanted to make this originally was supposed to be a 5-season show. Like Tony Gilroy wanted to do 5 seasons. Diego Luna, and he realized like Diego's going to age out of this really, really quick. He's going to be, significantly older and not able to do the stuff he needs to do by the time they get to the actual finale that we saw, where, the intent was to lead right into Rogue One. And I think that was smart of them. I think it was smart to not push it and do something where they're either having to de-age Luna or, just, do some, gymnastics to kind of get to the place they're trying to go to. They just told a very tight story.
Yeah. Cause I mean, it's not like it's you're going to produce this in a year,
right?
And then you're going to come back cause it's like a couple of years in between each of these seasons.
Yeah.
And then also keep in mind, like you have people who are appearing from Rogue One.
Yeah.
And how are they not just like Diego, but I mean Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, you've got the folks who you want to come at the very end who are going to tie into Rogue One, like the guy who played Draven, and like everyone's going to age,
Right, exactly. To me, I think the biggest mechanic that stood out in this, and to me this season, I mean, not that I'm a film critic or a student of film or have any business probably saying this, but to me as a fan, to me as someone who watches different forms of entertainment, TV, movies, and genres and that sort of thing, I don't think I've ever seen a show or a season like this be an absolute masterclass in not falling for the temptation to have to explain everything. This show leaves so many things, so many loose ends open.
Yeah.
And yet all you find yourself doing is using your imagination, wondering what. So as a great example, episodes 1 through 3, 1 year later, Sagrona Tima and Harvest. what the hell happened with that TIE Avenger? What the hell happened to it? They stole it. What did they do with it? Where is it? Where did it go? Are they using it against the Empire? Did they get caught with it? We have no idea what happens with that ship once Andor flies away with his friends and mourns the loss of Brasso. And because that wasn't the point of the story.
Yep.
The ship, stealing the ship, what happens with the ship is a vehicle to get to the place of, and this is where I thought one by one he was going to lose his friends. I thought this was going to be a story of, we see episodes 1 through 3, we see Brasso, die, maybe the next 3 we see, God, I forget his name, the mechanic character who Wilmot. We see him die, and then Bix is the last to go, and then we get into 10 through 12, and that's the thing that, he uses that to drive himself forward. That's where I thought they were going. Didn't play out that way, but the discipline they showed in not having to explain every little thing was absolutely incredible to me.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning of the series, it's the TIE Avenger piece. That's just for me. But as the series goes on and you get to episode 9, Welcome to the Rebellion, where Mon Mothma makes her statement, her die is cast at that point. She can no longer be a senator out in public anymore. She now has to go into hiding. We don't know what that does to her daughter or husband, except for one scene at the very end, which I think tells volumes about her and him and their character. And he doesn't speak a damn word.
Well, apparently there was an idea that, who's the dude that ends up marrying, it's the arranged marriage. Was it Sundlin?
No, his name is, let me look it up here. It's Skulden.
Skulden. Okay.
Davos Skulden.
So the idea being that Skulden actually, he was the one who owned the network that was broadcasting,
I was going to say, yeah,
Mothma's speech. He refuses to cut the signal, and therefore they have to have that other dude go in and do it manually. And the idea that Mothma's husband and Skulden's wife end up together, bonding over the fact that they have these rebellious spouses, and find this way of basically just anesthetizing themselves and living in comfort. That idea.
Yeah.
But it was, for whatever reason, it was kind of like cut back down to that. But it still works. It still works as this idea of like, he's just comfortable. He's just fine just being comfy.
Yeah.
Like this works for him, and he's perfectly fine with that. But you don't need all of that explained. Like even I saw that and I had no idea. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, figures.
Well, and I'll be honest, the first time I see that scene with him and Skulden's wife, I knew she looked familiar. I didn't make the connection that was Skulden's wife until because I read some.
Well, it just works. It works as like, oh yeah, and this aristocratic lady that.
Yeah. He's
Mothma, she's just happy to live the country club lifestyle.
Right.
Of course that's who he ends up with, because that's what he wants. He just wants it nice and peaceful and not to have to worry about anything and not to have to work too hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the fact they don't have to the fact they don't have to explain any of it, the fact they leave it open for interpretation, they leave it open for you and I to talk about, for us as fans to think about, for there not to be any sort of concrete explanation for it, I think is brilliant. I think it is and I say it's a masterclass because it shows the power of when you just have a focused story and tell it, and you don't get caught up in explaining every little detail to the fans like they're 5-year-olds.
One thing I'd add to what you said, because I think you're dead on. I would add one thing to it. When you're centered on the characters and the story, when you're using the story as a way to explore the characters and the characters as a way to explore the story, and it's kind of it's a mutual thing, and you're not driven by what's the plot, and hey, we've got to talk about this thing and that thing. it's why, going back to one of our favorite hobby horses, Battlestar Galactica, why it works so well. It was a drama that just happened to be set in science fiction. Science fiction was the framing. It wasn't like, that wasn't the bright, shiny thing at the center of it. It was the characters.
Yeah.
And here, you're focused on those characters. That's why you can have, like, honestly, it's funny that, that this would be the case, but like, I totally forgot. Granted, like, I smushed all those episodes in together at once, but it totally slipped my mind that we never talked about the TIE Avenger after that. Yep. I just realized that as you're talking about, like, son of a bitch, they never did mention that. What did happen?
Yeah.
But I was so into the characters and what was going on with them that it's like, yeah, like you were saying, it's a total device used to explore the characters.
Yeah.
Like, you're, as that's happening, like, it could get so tied up into the, oh my gosh, this TIE Avenger can do blah, 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 blah. You don't really know what its capabilities are. Like, oh, it shoots missiles and it's experimental and all this, but it doesn't go into that because it's more about like, wow, Cassian really doesn't know how to fly this thing. And then he gets this place and it's like, oh, now what's he going to do? And how's Cassian going to get out of this? And how does he deal with the fact that, like, someone he obviously kind of knew, got killed and he has to find his way out of it and all, like, you're involved in that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and who are these chuckleheads who are stuck on this planet in like this Lord of the Flies like setting? Like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah.
And then for that to go away, it's like, oh, okay, and we're on to the next thing because I'm so focused on the characters. Like, well, yeah, totally. The ship was just a thing to get us to talk about the characters.
Well, and the subtleness of what you just mentioned about, that feels like a throwaway aspect of the show, and yet at the same time, when he escapes, we now understand how Yavin was discovered in a way. Like there had, again, as a fan, we're not told this, but we can draw the line and draw the conclusion of, oh, Andor must have had a role in mentioning this nondescript, swampy, out of the way planet to maybe Luthen, maybe to others, of this would make a great base for the for the rebellion. It's out of the way, no one's paying attention to it. Well, so on and so forth.
Well, yeah, because when you're focused on the story itself and the characters, really, and those two are in this nice little symbiotic relationship, you can toss in so much stuff.
Yeah.
Just like the idea that Saw Gerrera's base is the base that we go to when we're in the Post-Squeal trilogy. And Kaylin was the one who pointed that. I was like, hey, is that the thing? I'm like, yep, you're right. It is. That's where they end up. And that's where
who ends up? Sorry.
That's where the rebels are operating out of when Han goes to, when we see Han and Leia meet up.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Before they go out, it's Force Awakens. Yeah.
No kidding.
It's that base.
Huh.
So, I mean, it's stuff like that you can toss in, and it's cool, but it doesn't take over. It's one of those things you're like, oh, wow, hey, that thing. Oh, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Because you're again, they're like teaching you, they're telling you right up front, like, this is about the characters. Like, oh, yeah, this is cool, and this is cool. We'll give you the Scooby snacks for this and all the stuff that you're going to like. But it's about these people. And once you realize that and you buy into that, man, it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, that was cool. Yeah, whatever. But what's going on with these people? Like, what's going on with Mothma? What's going on with Cassian?
Right.
All of that. So no, is so, and you were right. Like, it's masterfully done.
I mean, that's the only word I can come up with is masterfully.
And that doesn't happen in a lot of this stuff. It just doesn't. It's a lot of it is like, it serves a purpose. It gets the job done. And like we talked about on Wednesday, like, hey, studios want to make money because they can then they can make more content or more movies or more TV shows, and that makes them more money. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And so it isn't always grand art. A lot of times it's like, it's magic every time. Leave your money on the dresser. Like, it's just commerce. It's like Harrison Ford, when someone asked him, like, how do you pretend to be the Red Hulk? He's like, that's what the money's for. And the thing is, like, he's not lying. Like,
no, he's
not. As much as he likes acting, and I'm sure, it's a bit of a challenge for him. It's like, the money's kind of nice too,
Yeah.
But it's not all. That's why when you see something like this, that it does achieve a degree of popularity. I'm sure it's made Disney's money. I'm sure it's made Lucasfilm money. But you look at it, you're like, this is incredible. This is incredible storytelling. This is incredible from an artistic standpoint, and it should be celebrated because it don't always happen this way.
No, it does not. All right. Anything else on the mechanics of the show before I go back to my episode?
I've already derailed you by 15 minutes, so let's head back to where we were.
Son of a. All right, episodes 1 through 3 we talked about 1 year later, which is 1 year later from season 1. So we start off in I love the way they start off these first episodes of the 3 arc is you just get this 1 year later, dun, and then you get dun, and it's like BBY4, and which is before Battle of Yavin.
It feels like it should have been the other way. That's the one thing that bugged the shit out of me about this was it should have been 4 BBY. 4 years before Battle of Yavin.
I just love, out of the two of us and me being the logical engineer, that doesn't bother me, but it drives you absolutely insane.
Every single friggin' time. I was gritting my...
It's 4 BBY, damn it! But no, we talked about it. And what I find kind of interesting, and this will kind of lead into another, I think, tangent to go into here a little bit, is it's interesting to hear Andor talk to the mechanic or whoever it was that gave him the access to the TIE Avenger, who clearly is leaning away from the Empire and towards the Rebellion, where he gives her this speech about he seems very assured in what he's doing for the Rebellion, and really
So that time there was no sneaking. Like, that door was loud enough that it actually scared me. That scared me more than if you had snuck up on me, honestly. I heard that, I was like, is an animal snuck in here? Like, do I have a raccoon accompanying me on this show?
Could be.
Like, am I gonna get rabies? Who knows? Possibly. Anyways, sorry to interrupt. So if it's not me interrupting your arrangements, it's another member of my family. So
it's all about screwing up my arrangements.
Sorry, Abe. It's 10:44 p.m. here on the East Coast, and
you're watching Perspectives.
And shouldn't you be in bed?
Please pass along a happy birthday from me to Kaylin.
You can hardly tell.
Tell what?
That your hairline's receding.
Is this another lesson in who's paying for college?
I know my hairline was receding. Everybody knows my hairline is receding, but I just don't need to point it out.
I'm sorry.
And just keep in mind, we do share the same genes in terms of body hair, so I don't know.
Thanks a lot. I was called a Sasquatch when I was in middle school thanks to your hair genetics.
Did you bite him?
No, I did kick someone in the nuts, though.
By the way, Tim says happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I believe, not to not to steal your thunder here. See what I'm doing there? But I believe instead of Kaylin's Comedy Corner, we're having Kaylin's Thunderbolts Corner because she has thoughts on the movie, and we already talked about it, but she wants to reclaim her time as in some sort of congressional hearing and share her thoughts on Thunderbolts. So
the chair recognizes. Oh, gosh, he's giving her the headphones too. Look at that.
Because you already got one hand busy there, so you do that.
Hello there.
Thanks for clipping my ear. Jeez.
Oh my gosh, you're fine. Have a seat.
Couldn't even raise a child right and get him to put headphones on.
Take this captain's chair here.
Jeez, okay.
So, how are you?
Don't get so hormonal.
Oh,
You want that time of the month? Is it that time of the month for you?
Oh, gosh.
You just keep right on going. You tell me what your plans are for going to college.
Okay, I'm sorry. Not really, but
How are you?
I'm good. I'm
That is
great.
good. What are some of your thoughts on the Thunderbolts?
This is probably my personal opinion. I think it's the best movie since Spider-Man No Way Home came out, personally.
Yeah?
That's just my opinion.
I can see that.
But I honestly really liked how it highlighted mental illness as a whole. I feel like it's definitely not talked about enough in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or just in movie cinema in general. And I personally felt very seen by it, and it was very heartwarming. And I really like how the characters, how it highlighted a lot of past trauma of characters that might have been ignored, especially and sidelined for main characters. But I liked how it highlighted their trauma and made sure that their struggles weren't ignored, and that I think that made the movie a lot more meaningful in a way. And basically, that's my opinion on it. I just really liked how powerful of a message it was.
Yeah, I said to your dad last week, one of my favorite parts of the movie had to be when they snapped him out of the Void character because they all threw their arms around him. How it was like one massive group hug, and when they all kind of rose up from it, they were in the street. They weren't in that sort of dreamscape that they were in, that was all part of him being the Void. Just that was a very cool metaphor for what, like you said, with the mental illness thing, like having people there to support you, and how people can't do this stuff alone. It's a community of people. It's family, it's friends, it's loved ones. And so, I agree with you. I thought it was surprising. I didn't know what to expect from it, but it was definitely, it has a lot of heart to it. So very much enjoyed it.
Very much enjoyed it. Very accurate depiction, especially as someone who has struggled with mental health a lot. But I definitely feel like it was probably the most realistic depiction that I've seen of the idea of depression and struggling with mental struggles in general. It was just such a good, and even the fight at the end between Bob and his darker self. It hit a little bit too close to home because it just highlights that the negative persona that we have in our heads, and the longer we fight it, the more we feel like we're becoming a part of it. And it's kind of like that give and take where it feels like you're never really winning. And that's where kind of the whole aspect of community comes in, and I think that was really good.
Nice. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Yeah, that was, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it much more than Captain America 4, which sadly was all just built around Harrison Ford turning into the Red Hulk. So this had a much deeper story to it, and like you said, the way they bring out kind of the struggles with mental health, and use it as a metaphor in the story, I thought was really cool. It's you don't see that done in fiction that well very often. So so yeah, no, 100%. Good movie overall, and we will never look at the name Bob the same way anymore moving forward.
I forget, it was at the beginning of the movie when I told my dad, and it was when he first appeared at the very beginning of the film, and I was like, oh, I really like Bob, and I was leaning over to him, and then I paused for a second, thought about that, and then I leaned back to him, and I was like, oh, that must mean that he's either a psychopath or he's insane. It happens every single time that I'm watching a movie, and I'm like, oh, this character's really nice, and they end up being a psych ward patient or something.
Yep.
It's always so disappointing. But
all right, so now you got to say something, where your dad's in earshot, where you're like, oh, I think this show can go on without him. just to needle him a little bit,
I'm just saying. At points, I feel like I'm more entertaining than he is.
Oh, look at him! What is he doing?
More delightful than him. So.
What is he doing back there? Is he folding a blanket? Is he arranging?
He is igniting his modern housewife.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good Lord. The body language is hysterical.
Don't give me that look. You're the one that does all the laundry in the house. You really want to deny that sentence? Who does the groceries too? Okay, so you're saying that you love doing grocery shopping and you love doing the laundry, and you're the only one that does it in the entire household, basically. Rarely. But I'm just saying, it's kind of a hard case to fight. It's good for you. Good. It's good for you. I'm very proud of you. He's doing a great job.
He is.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a good birthday?
I had a pretty good birthday.
Nice.
It was fun. Very overstimulating.
Overstimulating because of the sugar in the cake, or overstimulating because you did a lot of activities?
There was people. There was a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh, nice. What is one memory you were taking away from yesterday?
Probably when they were all singing happy birthday to me and I was just sitting in that chair and I didn't know what expression to make, so I was just sitting there with like that weird
It is kind of uncomfortable when everyone's attention is on you, isn't it?
It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's weird. At least
I always would stare at the candles because I didn't know what else to do and smile.
Yeah, smart.
That's all I do.
Well,
but I have the same thought going through my head, which is like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Because they're all looking at me and they're singing.
Two most awkward things in the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, nice. Well,
I'll let you take back your show.
Oh, thank you. You're relinquishing the throne.
I would just like to say this last comment, just so that Tim doesn't get too comfortable, but his laugh does sound like a car backfiring.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Because that one really I could see that hit in the headphones.
It does pop in the headphones, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, good chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now bed. Okay, we're into show and tell. Oh my gosh, it's Stray Kids photo cards. All right, you need to go to bed. You have dance performances the next 2 nights.
Oh boy.
Quick like. All right, good night. Love you. Sweet dreams. I know, and you're paying for college.
I gotta say, if one thing was proven, if you can't make a recording one night, I think she can sit in and help run the show.
Are you kidding? She'd take over the show.
Fair enough.
That's why I've got to be Cal Ripken here. I can't miss a game.
No, you can't.
Or actually, no. Who's the guy? Who's the guy who was either hurt or whatever, and then gave up his spot for Cal Ripken?
Oh, I don't remember.
It was just done.
Yeah.
Boy, sucks to be that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I had a career once. Sure you did, Bill. Whatever. Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that was Kaylin's Thunderbolts Corner.
She had some really good things to say there. I thought that was really good.
She has been doing a directing class at her school, and is going to be coming up at the end of this month or the beginning of June. I can't remember what date it actually falls on. I have it on my calendar, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So she's going to be producing and directing a play with this director's showcase, and it's actually a play she wrote.
Oh, wow. Very
And
cool.
it's a play that she had on a much bigger scale, so she kind of had to scale it down and really work to find out, like, what are the characters, what's the story, what's the essence of it, so that I can boil it down.
Mm-hmm.
No, she has a tremendous grasp on like story and what drives characters and stuff like that. Like, it's one of those deals where when she starts talking about like the things that she's writing, and she goes into like these character sketches that she goes and figures out all the stuff and the backstory and this and that and the other. I'm like, and this is why I have not written a novel yet, because
that's funny.
I don't naturally think along those lines, and she just like hones in on that. I'm like, oh, I can talk about it, but like doing it, like, it's so much work.
Yeah.
But she loves it, man. So it doesn't surprise me that she would have, that level of insight.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, of course she does. Like, that's how her brain works. That's what her gifting is. But it's awesome to watch in action.
That is really cool. Nice.
Yes, indeed. There's times where I'm like, damn it, I should be coming up with that. I'm going to steal that.
Indeed.
And then I'm like, what? I'm going to steal it and do what? Tell that to those two people in Poland who are listening.
I'm going to steal it and then screw up my arrangements.
I'll tell you what, you hang on to it and eventually buy me a house. But anyways, yes, some thoughts on Thunderbolts. Where were we for the second time that a member of my family has messed up your arrangements?
Indeed. We were starting to talk about episodes 1 through 3.
Yes.
Which
we got through 1 through 3. We were on 4 through.
No, we did
6,
not.
Weren't we?
No, don't stop it.
No, because we talked about the TIE Avenger. I thought
we did, but we didn't talk about some other things in episodes 1 through 3.
Oh, that was kind of tied onto the mechanics.
I was starting to, and that's when things. Hey, you again said I'll step back and let you talk, and then you keep moving it forward. I'm just saying. All right, now that I have the floor.
Where's Hannah wanting him when I need her?
Shame. All right, so we have a little bit more of a view into Mon Mothma's life, which coming out of episodes 1 through 3, I thought this series should have been called Andor and Mothma.
It kind of was a tag team.
Because quite honestly, this is as much a story about her development as it is him. Which I thought was really kind of interesting. Sigrona Tima, we see what really stood out to me, and I'm sorry we're going episode by episode here, but I'm going with what stood out to me. And in this episode, what stands out is when Mon Mothma's daughter is, upset by the lack of connection she has with her soon-to-be husband. You have Mothma being this sort of shell of a mom to her. She's there, but rather than being, someone who tries to talk to her about it or connect with her about what she's going through in that moment. And I find this very interesting as you contrast that with episode 3. She's just kind of like, I'm so very sorry. It's like, you need to go through with this, but I'm going to be with you through it. And I'm going to be at a distance, and I know this sucks, but you got to go through and do this because I need you to cover my debts, basically.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to see that side of Mothma where she's so, practical and pragmatic about stuff, where she could have been the parent and consoled her daughter and told her daughter she didn't need to go through with this and all of that. And instead she just gives her this very shallow and empty, I'm so sorry, that's it. That's all she got. And it's interesting when you get into 3 and all of a sudden Mothma is like, oh, you don't have to do this. You can run away if you want. And she's basically like, I wish you were drunk like your mother on your wedding day, which was like, oh, damn.
I mean, cold as hell.
That is
cold
as an ice cube.
Yeah, no, that was... And it's weird that you see the contrast between like the down and gritty like firefights and people were struggling and all this, and then you see Mon Mothma in this like country club, space, luxury world, but yet, her sacrifice is literally her family.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, her marriage with her husband is already like over at this point. Like it's on the wall. Like that is just a marriage in name only.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's already checked out. Yeah. He's already just like, this is, I'm done. So done with you sort of thing. And now she's marrying off her daughter in order to further the rebellion.
Yeah.
She's literally sacrificing her family for this. And the story of this, the story of Star Wars really is sacrifice. Especially like this story, Andor into Rogue One, into the original trilogy. Like, people are sacrificing, like they're giving up in order to. And yeah, it's so easy to kind of play off. In my mind, my first instinct is like, oh, well, yeah, rich people problem. And then I'm like, but you really want to give up your family? Like, you want to, like, not just like give up, like, oh my gosh, it's neglect. Like, no, I'm making a choice to marry my daughter off strategically for this purpose.
Yeah.
Damn, that's cold. You know? Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, the story of Mon Mothma is so much like, I don't know if it's a 1A, 1B, but it is definitely like a strong second to Cassian's arc in this.
Yeah.
You know, because she is such an important figure.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would, if anything, I would say it's actually 2A and 2B with Mon Mothma and Luthen.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing how everything plays out.
Yep. No, I would agree. Also from those first 3 episodes too, the story between, Mothma, Luthen, and her friend Tay, and how, and what I love they did using the Tay character is showing the price that gets paid. Here he is doing this favor for her, and now because of the rebellion, his businesses are now suffering.
Yes.
Because of this thing he's been supporting, his status and his stature are now in question. And now, of course, he has, cold feet. He threatens, basically revealing what's happening to Skulden through this marriage and everything. And Luthen right away has the instincts. He's like,
oh yeah.
And I love the line where I forget what he says. I remember Mothma continually says, give me time. I'll get a number. We'll pay him. It'll be fine. And Luthen's like, no, like, this has to be dealt with.
Yes.
And I forget what she says to him, but I love his response to her, which is like, how very nice for you. Like,
yes.
Where she doesn't have to deal with, the ugly underbelly of what they're doing. Luthen has to deal with it, and he's just like, how very nice for you that you don't have to muddy your hands the way that I do.
What is it? What movie was it? Oh no, it was wasn't it the Dark Knight Rises?
Mm-hmm.
When it's like, that you have a friend who can reach down into the muck and the mire and get their hands dirty, or something like that. I forget.
Yep.
Was that him? Was that Gordon?
I think it was, yeah.
But it very much, like, Tay turns into Maury from Goodfellas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's the guy who just pushes it too far.
Yep.
And in a different way. He's much more subtle than Maury, just continually, like, busting Robert De Niro's balls and all that. Like, but he's saying it, and he's trying to be more subtle with it. But at the same time, like, he's that guy who's like, okay, you're now more trouble than you're worth. You're going to get the ice pick in the back of your head in your Cadillac. That's it. You're done.
Yeah.
And it turns into that. Oh, Tay. Oh, we won't be hearing from him no more.
Yeah.
Literally, like, getting into the limo, and he's going to wind up in the weeds. Like, that's. Like,
so,
the only thing that was missing was Clemenza riding shotgun. That
is the comment I wanted to make to you after I watched episode 3. Is did that not? Because I know it took you a little bit longer to see it.
Freaking look over the shoulder. I'm like, oh.
Did that not feel like a Godfather-esque scene as Cinta
Totally.
Like, as soon as you see Cinta and she sees Vel, and Vel's like, oh shoot, I know where this is going. And it isn't to a pretty place.
No, he's never going to be heard from again.
To quote, I forget the great Chicago White Sox announcer, but this was his signature line: "He gone." Yeah. That's it for Tay. After that, he is no more. And
only mentioned one more time. And here's a guy who is again, and this is the other thing that is so but it's a story of every revolution. Like at some point, isn't the revolution going to become corrupt in order to preserve the revolution? And you see that at different periods of time. Like so many of the people who are instrumental to the revolution, to the rebellion, are just, when it's okay, your time is done, and now we're going to rewrite the narrative.
Yeah,
like the whole thing with Mon Mothma being brought in with Gold Squadron instead of dirty old Cassian. You know that. Oh no, we're trying to rewrite the narrative, and it's like you have Luthen being erased. Saw's pushed off to the side, and here are people like. And this Tay guy, like, if he doesn't support the rebellion, if he doesn't prop up Mon Mothma, if he doesn't straighten out her financials, they're dead in the water.
Right. Yeah. 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 She'll come under suspicion. So.
And how weird is it that Luthen kind of falls to the same fate, but at the same time, Luthen is much more realistic. Like, he actually knows. He's like, no one will ever know.
Yeah.
Like, I am going to be erased. I'm going to be forgotten. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And in a way, that even makes him sadder. It makes him an even more tragic figure. The fact that he is resigned to this, but yet he is so utterly committed.
And I forget what episode he says this in. I don't know if it's in 4 through 6 or if it's part of 7 through 9, but I loved there was an episode where he demonstrates weakness and the overwhelm of what he's doing when he's talking with Clea. And I forget what they're discussing, but he's like,
yes,
there's too many lines out. I can't keep track of like we're drowning. There's too much. There's too much going on. I can't keep it all straight. Like he goes from being this guy in season 1 who had control over everything that was going on because the operation was small to now he's struggling with the scale of what he's created. It's grown beyond this little thing that he had control over, and he doesn't have control over it anymore.
Well, but at the same time, like, he still has some control. I don't know if it's necessarily control. I think it's just like, it's almost showing like even the strongest person, even the person that you think has, just to compare it to so I started watching John Wick 4 the other night because I don't know, to me that seemed like a great way to prepare for bed.
Oh God!
But
that's
But
that's
you
calming.
look at someone like who is described in the first John Wick movie, just a person of pure resolve, and yet they're brought to their knees by one incident, or they do show weakness, like even that person who you think is just a hardened razor of a person, they can crack.
Yeah.
And it's funny that like we see that moment of weakness, and then he's kind of brought back. And even though like he's not the same, like he's still, you don't really see that again, even right till the very end. He's very much Luthen to the nth degree. It is showing that like, yes, even this person can crack, even this person gets overwhelmed. That's at least the way I took it. It was more overwhelmed than it was like he had lost control, because even as things sprawled, like he was always a person who was going to control his environment, whether it was dealing with his sources, whether it was, when he finally knows the jig is up and I'm going out my way, not your way. He is going to control as much as he possibly can. But even that person has a moment where they kind of lose their grasp on it for a moment. They're like,
yeah, 100%. What else? Oh, and then last thing from the first 3 episodes, love the just the dance music at the end in the wedding, and you see
the Mothma rave. We need to release the Mothma cut now.
We do, but to see Mothma just and I love how I was watching, I think, a YouTube clip of this, and in the comments, someone summarized it really well. It's like, this is a woman who is dancing this way because her entire world is falling apart and she cannot control it. And so I love that image of this put together senator who is just feeling just out of control at this point and just letting herself go on the dance floor. Even they even flash to her husband, who's just kind of looking at her like, damn, I didn't know she had bars, you know?
Well, but when I saw that moment from him, I actually thought like there was a bit of tenderness.
Yeah.
Almost like that's who I remember. Like you could almost picture them as younger back when like that might have been going back to like they met, you know, dancing, or they met at a club, whatever club on Chandrila looks like, you know, but it's like he sees this glimpse of her, but yet he's kind of misreading it. Like this is the only way that she can find catharsis, and he's thinking like, oh wow, she's having a great time, and for her this is like, this is it. Like this is the only way I can get some kind of release in this moment, because if I don't, you know, I'm just going to start strangling people, or I'm going to smash glasses or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is the only release that she can find.
Yeah.
And there's a beauty in that, and there's a sadness in that too. And it's also the sadness of you know, at least to my eyes, him misreading it in a way.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like he's kind of that clueless character.
Yep. No, 100%. 100%. Yeah. So strong outing with episodes 1 through 3, 4 through 6. Well, and I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think somewhere in the first 3, we get the scene with Krennic and this introduction to Gorman, right?
Yes. The briefing,
which really was kind of like a play on, you know, the old kind of World War II films.
Was that Have You Ever Been to Gorman? I almost want to say it was Ever Been to Gorman. Like that was kind of the seed sown, because then I think that was actually in the first 3. No, you're right, because Ever Been to Gorman is when we start getting kind of that arc.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like it is that kind of like, I don't even know if like it's like almost like that heightened World War II, like it's the secret lair in a mountain.
It's an episode 1, sorry.
Yeah, it's almost like this is like a Hydra sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, which I mean, honestly, does if there is a bit of Red Skull in Krennic, and there is a bit of Hydra in the Stardust grouping. But yeah, no, it had that vibe for sure.
And there's also something very, you know, relatable to our time that comes out of that first episode, where they're talking, you know, especially where they have the Ministry of Enlightenment, who decides to kind of take, you know, the Gorman people and start to paint a picture about them in a very particular way. You know, that was very interesting, I found. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, there's always it's standard. You just find a way to make people feel angry at someone rather than angry at the other people.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
I can't get into any more because, well, I've had a couple of Bufords, and I'm gonna
couple. That's the official name now. The Bufords. All right, very nice. But yeah, no. So and again, I was, you know, we had speculated based on the trailer we saw that in things, you know, theories we had kind of read about from our you know, my various portfolio of sources, that the Gorman massacre would play a role here, and sure enough, Gorman was very central to this series. And you know, not that it's a new thing. I mean, it was something that was highlighted, I think, in Rebels. It was spoken of, but not, I think, ever shown. And in this season, they made Gorman kind of front and center in terms of a, you know, central conflict happening between the Empire and a planet. Really, you know, again, it was Imperial ambition, and what we later find out was a need for an energy source for the Death Star that led to them stripping this planet.
Was it an energy source, or was it I thought it was a raw material that was like because I thought Jedha was the energy, the
well, the raw material. Well, if maybe I'm equating the wrong thing, because it was under the Emperor's energy program, but the raw material of the planet was necessary for the Death Star. They don't say specifically if it's for energy or not. The Kyber that they get out of Jeddah is, I think, for the super laser.
Yes.
That's what allows them to do the super laser that blows up the planet. But basically, yeah, I mean, we start to see, our good friend Cyril Carlin. What's his name? George Carlin? No, Karn.
Cyril Karn.
Cyril Karn. I by the way, the cereal thing, credit to the Scruffies for that one. That is absolutely hysterical. Hysterical because his character does eat cereal throughout the series, so it just kind of works. But Cyril Karn, we didn't talk about that too. Cyril Karn and Deidre are an item.
Oh, Dedra. Because I want to say Deidre too all the time. I had to
thank you for correcting every single thing I say.
I thought you would want me to help you with that.
Thank you, Dedra Miro. But we
not to be confused with Raina or Mark.
Thank you.
Although her and Raina both did have blonde hair.
They did. We did have a really funny scene of Dedra and Cyril. God dang it! You flustered me. I'm flustered.
Messed up all your arrangements.
You messed up my arrangements again. No, just the dinner with mom scene was really funny in the first 3 episodes.
That was the moment when I actually kind of liked Dedra for a little bit.
She does a great job dealing with mom. The funniest part though is Cyril, who just kind of wanders into a bedroom and just collapses in absolute defeat.
And you know what? That was the moment when I was like, you know what? I feel that. I've been at that point where you've been at gatherings or a dinner or something, and you go into another room and you just like lean against a wall or something. And you're just like,
yep.
If there was a way that I could transport myself out of here, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, Dedra's in the other room like, listen, you old bag.
Here's how it's going to work. I love how the mom is like unflappable though. She hears it and she's like, all right, darling, here we go.
Well, because she realizes like, oh, I've met my match.
Yeah.
I thought I was the puppet master. Oh,
she's going to whoop me. Whoop me something fierce.
I thought I was the big dog, and turns out you got a bigger bite.
There we have it. But yeah, so episodes 4 through 6, ever been to Gorman? I have friends everywhere. And what a festive evening.
The I have friends everywhere thing is interesting how they carried that through.
Yeah.
Even up to the last episode I kind of like that as a callback. It was very much it felt to me like it was very much their, you know, what do you hear, Starbuck? Nothing but the rain, that sort of thing.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. These episodes were very good. It was all in service of building up the conflict in Gorman. So again, this is now using Uncle Todd's favorite date vernacular, BBY3. So we are now 3 years out from the battle, the Battle of Yavin, or before the Battle of Yavin. But we have Gorman slowly falling under the Imperial's thumb more and more. And I love how they did that. I love how it was a thriving, culture and city. When we see, the newsreels of episode one, and then when we get to 4 through 6, we start to see the darkness, starting to kind of fall on this city. We start to see the Imperial presence, not heavy, but it's there. They're in the middle of constructing this what'd they call it? Was it an outpost or
it was an armory.
An armory.
Well, the thing is, like, it's already the Empire there's already a bit of a shadow.
Yeah.
There is that.
Tarkin apparently landed a ship on a bunch of people, so
which don't go well for the people underneath the ship. So I mean, you kind of have that already, that thing in the past. So there's already a wound, but they're thriving nonetheless. And you listen to them talk, and it's like, oh yes, we're the youngest, Twillers or whatever. They've been making this fabric for. It's like 80 generations or something. I forget what the exact number is, but I mean, it's been a long ass time. So you get like just the sheer depth of this culture. And also just the idea that like, oh, they've been kind of left to their own devices, but there is this kind of dark period of the history but we've overcome it, and now there's something that we want.
Yeah.
And man, yeah, it is one of those deals where it's like it starts getting ominous real fast. Like it's one of those things where you start to realize like, oh, this is getting out of hand real quick, and nobody understands just how quickly it's already gone.
Yep.
And even the people who are there don't even quite realize like you're already cooked. This is all done.
100%. And then, it's interesting. I mean, I do feel like Cyril Karn's character is growing. In some ways he's growing from where he was in season 1. He seemed a lot more inept, in season 1. And here we see, in his role on Gorman, he plays it convincingly. He plays it, well. I forget what the situation was, but at one point, doesn't he like bark at his office staff to like leave or something like that for some reason? Or I forget. Something happens and he kind of like orders everyone.
If I remember right, so that's when the ISB shows up. That might be the third batch of episodes, wasn't it? Because where was the Gorham massacre? That wasn't that in 7 through 9?
That was 7 through 9. Yeah.
Okay, so as we get closer to that, that's when they show up, and then he realizes there's a listening device in his office, and he barks at everyone. Then there might have been another one, but I do love how, again, like everything is just, it's that building up of someone, and you kind of see them coming into themselves, and you're like, but it's also a person who's a complete douchebag that you're like, I can't wait for this person to get taken down. So it's tough to watch them get built up, but at the same time, as we're watching this, you're like, oh, it's going to be so delicious when this person falls. And it wasn't quite, because there was a few things, but yes, it was still nice to see him get his comeuppance. But it was like this place suited him. Like, oh, like I get to, wear nice things, and I get to be in charge of this, and look at this little plaza I get to walk through, and it's like, and this asshole gets all of the good things. Isn't this nice?
Yeah.
But you can tell how into the whole idea of being like this secret agent. Like, this is what he's wanted all this time. And at the same time, like, he has no idea that he's being played.
Yeah.
Even as he thinks he's playing everybody, he's being played.
Yeah.
And it goes to show, like, even as ambitious as he is, even as like smart as he thinks he is, he's still kind of a rube in the hands of the Empire.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
And in a way, it adds a little tragedy. That's that kind of thing where you're like, you still feel a little bad for him, but then you're like, no, he's still a douche. he's still on the side of the space Nazis. So
yeah.
Nah.
Although tough. I did find that scene when he reports back to Deidre and
Dedra.
Oh my God! Stop it!
I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Stop it!
I'm only correcting you because I've in my head said Deidre so many times. I'm like, no, it's Dedra.
Honest to God, does it even matter?
It does. Go ahead and ask the Scruffies if it matters. I'm sure they'll give you a nice little lecture on that.
Dedra. Is that okay?
It is.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
When he's talking to Dedra and Major Partagaz, and after he gives his report and he gets a glowing review, and Partagaz walks out of the room, he says to Dedra, I don't think I felt so alive. Which I'm thinking, man, if you've had some time with her and you two in love, I don't think that's a compliment for her. Like the fact that he gets a compliment on his job, like that's the thing that makes him feel alive. Like, but it does speak to what he puts his value in, right?
Yes.
I mean, he's trying to become someone within the Empire, and this is, and I'll get to when we get to 7 and 9, or specifically episode 8, that that line he says to Andor is just so heavy because it's heavy for him. Who are you? Does he even know who he is?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the tragedy of his character is he's always trying to be something for someone else, for his mom, for the Empire, for Dedra.
God
dang it.
You have a 50-50 chance, dude. You're guessing wrong.
And I get it wrong every single time. And then I have to be corrected by you, which is getting more and more aggravating as the evening wears on.
If this were blackjack, it would become like this mathematical thing that people would write papers about. Like, I can't believe it. Like, mathematically, he should have gotten it right at least once.
Oh, my God.
Anyways, we were talking about Dedra and Serial.
And again, Scruffys get credit for that. Come on, got to give credit where credit is due. But nonetheless, episodes 4 through 6, great. This is the heater right here. These three. This is what's heating up what is coming in episodes 7 through 9 with the Gorman. We see the rebels in Gorham starting to form. Cyril is trying to infiltrate. Again for the purposes of, trying to shine a light on whoever the what does he call them, the external or the outer, what did he call it? It's ne'er-do-wells from the outside, who are kind of getting involved, like, which is really, I think,
outside agitators.
Thank you. That time I'll take that, but Deidre, I don't want to hear it. Dedra.
Okay, so you'll take the alley-oop, but you won't take a little bit of constructive criticism.
No, I won't.
I see how that works.
I draw my lines, then I stay within them. I think I need some more seltzer myself. Need to get another bottle here. I'm dry.
Bit of the bubbly.
A little bit of the bubbly. But no, the where was I going with all this?
No idea.
No idea either. When Andor visits the rebels. So Cyril, like, I just found that whole like story arc with him kind of interesting, where I don't feel like he's as involved with the rebels as I was expecting him to be. Like I expected him to be, when we see the rebels having meetings and stuff, I assumed he would be there and involved and reporting back. And in some ways he is, and in other ways he's not. And so it kind of confused me a little bit what his role was there.
Well, I think that adds more. I think it adds more to the story for him to be more ambiguous, because I feel like he's definitely not with the rebellion as the capital R rebellion, but I think he sympathizes with the Gormans, the Gorman resistance. Let's put it that way. In that he's comfy, he likes it there. He likes the people. He likes the nice things. He likes the culture, and ultimately that makes him sympathetic to, like, man, it really kind of stinks that we're going to like strip mine this planet within an inch of its life, so that to the point where it's going to collapse into a ball of dust, and everybody's going to have to go live somewhere else. And that's because everyone's going to have to go live somewhere else, instead of, well, we're just going to bomb this place into kill everybody that we can, and then just let everybody else rot. That idea, it's a shame for him. Yep. And I think that makes him sympathetic to the point where there is a bit of a wavering there.
Yeah.
And then when we get into the actual Gorman massacre proper, there was a couple of things I read. I don't know if it was in any of these articles or if it was in something I read elsewhere, but just that idea of, like, could he have tipped to the rebellion in that moment when he's seeing all this stuff go down, and he's realizing, like, this is what it looks like. But I think it works best if it's left ambiguous, where he just kind of pops in every so often, and he's like, he's helping them, but he's also helping the Empire. But then it almost seemed like, because it's ambiguous, it almost seems like he's kind of tilting, like, yeah, maybe he's helping the Resistance a little bit more than he's helping the Empire. Maybe he is kind of leaning in this direction. That ambiguity keeps it kind of up in the air, I felt.
Which is interesting, because so much of his character in season 1 was about justice. He was going after Andor and being relentless about it because he wanted to bring this person to justice. He had killed 2 people. How dare he? He's this outsider who has no idea about the situation, doesn't understand that this guy was essentially, being provoked by the 2 people who got killed.
Well, but even in that way, like, it ultimately comes down to, like, this is a dude who's working in in a glorified accountant's office.
Right. Yeah.
And this guy created an error in his spreadsheet
mm-hmm.
in some ways. And that's what really pisses him off, that he messed up my spreadsheet. Yep. And he must pay, damn it. And it's like, and he even like in the first 3 episodes, he's talking to that guy who was doing these orientation, like, yes, and I remember one day I discovered a discrepancy, and it's led me to this point where I am now a middle manager.
Yes.
And someday I hope to be diddling with someone in the ISB. Like, that's the upward mobility of this guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's in a way they did a really good job with Cyril, because he is such a repugnant kind of character. He is like the toadiest of toadies. He is the just, my gosh, he's worse than a lot of folks you could think of who are like, oh yeah, that person, whatever. But it's like, this is a person who revels in this stuff. Like, he is willing to grovel and not just grovel, but grovel to the most grovelly of grovelists. But then you see his mom, and then you see the way that he's being used here, and you see the way he's been played here, and you're like, this guy is just so clueless. And it does give you a little bit of sympathy for him, and that is the way that is kind of the artistry, one of the master strokes of this. That, like, in a way, you actually feel bad for this guy, even though he is the douchiest of douches. He is the most weaselly of the weasels, and yet there is a bit of sympathy. There's a glimmer of sympathy that you have for him, even for me, someone with like the blackest of black hearts, who is just like off with their heads with the jerks, and so like, yes, give me the rebellion tattoo and whatever. But even I'm like, I feel a little bit bad for the guy.
Yeah,
I hate myself for feeling it, but I do feel a little bad for the guy, and that's the mastery of the show, that like they managed to take this guy who's the least sympathetic character, and they make you feel bad for him a little bit.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch. And Dedra the same way. Like, this plasticized, hustling little weasel of a person who's barely a human being. And yet at the end of the show, you're like, but she has had this against her, and that, like, wait a minute, why am I feeling bad for, like, damn it, you pulled me in, So like when we talk about wrestling, and sometimes I'm like, damn it, they got me. I know how this works, and they pulled me into it, even knowing all that. It's a wonderful thing, in terms of like storytelling, that you can do that. Anyways, that's my little mini rant.
Were you disappointed at all by the lack of Saw Gerrera?
No.
Okay.
Because much like Jaws, Saw Gerrera works best when you know less about him. He works best as a mysterious, ominous figure. And it's best that you don't understand why they're like, this dude is too extreme. And you just see stuff like with him, like in Rogue One with Borgullet, and him like, there's not much of me left. And him deciding like, yeah, I could get out of here, but know what? No, this is where it ends. And in this, and in here, you see him basically, what, we get like 3 major scenes with him, where he basically just says, no, you're here for as long as I say you're here, and you'll like it. And another one where he shoots one of his own guys because he's like, he's a traitor. And then another where, he starts huffing the whatever the hell that was. We don't even
fuel.
Yeah, he's huffing the fuel fumes and preaching a sermon. Like he's gone full on from like rebel leader to now he is like shaman. And he's converted this dude. And it's like, he's gone full on Colonel Kurtz at this point. He's now Marlon Brando, Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, where he doesn't have people who are like his soldiers. He has disciples, Yeah. And it works better if you only see him in those bursts, and through the 2 or 3 scenes, you see this descent into madness where you're like, again, like you don't need everything filled in between. You're just like, oh, I can see from here to here to here. Oh, I totally see how we get to Rogue One. I totally see how we get to this guy here.
I mean, there's a part of me though that was just kind of disappointed. I mean, I didn't fully understand the point of the whole Saw Willman scene, other than, you're kind of seeing the madness of Saw, but I would have much preferred, this is just me, I would have much preferred seeing something where you get a sense for why he ends up becoming more machine than man. Like that isn't ever really spelled out very clearly. You get the sense he is paranoid. You get the sense that he's a risk taker, but it's like, okay, I still haven't seen or understand, like, why does he end up losing so much of himself? I mean, he just seems like he's sitting here ordering his guys around. Like, what action is this guy actually seeing? You know what I mean?
Well, so the one thing I will add on to my little Saw mini sermon there was, like, if you had to give me more of him, like maybe one more scene instead of the hologram communication, would have been good. However, I don't know that you're ever going to get anything more satisfying that's really going to show that. Like, if anything, it shows like Saw is nuts.
Yeah.
And in a way, like, he's almost craving this is a dude who is craving to be a martyr. And unfortunately, no matter how many risks he takes, he ends up living until Jeddah. And that's where he's finally like, this is where I get to become a martyr. And unfortunately, he's not even going to be martyred. Like, no one's going to remember him. Like, nobody talks about him after that.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part, is here's a dude who has been craving. He's hungry to be a martyr. Hungry. He would have gladly, taken a blaster to the head if it meant people were talking about him for the next 10 generations. Ain't nobody talks about him.
No.
And there's a tragedy to that character.
Yeah.
I see what you mean, but I think that through, and I'm just like, I don't know that you could have had one more scene or even two more scenes that really would have satisfactorily done that. Like, to me, it's almost better. It's better as headcanon.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm bitter that we didn't get to see Baby Borgullet, but
that one does piss me off, honestly.
What
about the merchandising? The merchandising. Think of
merchandise.
That, think of that so Disney World, like little Baby Borgullets.
I think it was in these in episodes 4 through 6 that we get Luthen kind of getting overwhelmed, and that leads us to
actually, one more thing I just wanted to point out here. Episodes 4 through 6. This is where we get rebellions are built on hope.
No, that's actually in
is it
8?
Is it? Oh, okay.
It is
never
in
mind.
8.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking the first time he was at the hotel.
Second
Son
time.
of a bitch.
Second time.
There goes my thunder.
But the guy remembers him. He remembers him, and he doesn't report him to the Empire.
He does. He's a good guy for that.
Okay, in episode 6, we get a view into God, I lost
A View to a Kill?
If you didn't keep interrupting me, I'd actually finish a coherent thought. I had it all teed up, and then we had to do the whole mistake on the Hope is Rebellion sort of thing.
But you go ahead and get yourself oriented. I'm going to perhaps pour myself a little something.
All right.
So you do
all
that.
right. Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, he can hear me. Okay. No, so in episodes 5 and 6, we get a hint that Skulden has discovered that some of his antiquities could be forgeries. And so I wanted to get your thoughts, sir, on Clea and the scene where she's removing the listening device before said piece is inspected further. I kind of thought it was interesting on a number of fronts. We get to see Krennic and Mothma kind of debate their respective points of view. But while that's all going on, you have Young, who is there. Jung, I'm not quite sure how to say his last name, but
wasn't it Lonnie? Wasn't it
Lonnie Jung? Is that his name?
Yeah, I just remember Lonnie.
But Lonnie's there, and Clea has him basically acting as a human shield while she's trying to use this tool that looks like a weapon. I don't know how her hand doesn't get somehow massacred by using this thing.
It does. Like, she's bleeding out.
Oh, is she bleeding? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But credit to the actress, and I know you sent me a little blurb about her, this being her first role.
This is her first movie role, out of acting school dude.
Elizabeth Dulau.
And her final, well, if you have it there, like, but her, like, who wasn't it like her acting teacher recommended her, and then they're like, they go through an audition, like, okay, yeah, cool, and okay, your final audition is going to be here at Pinewood Studios, which, if you're not familiar with the production side of this, Pinewood Studios is like one of those halcyon places where if you go there, you are basically walking amongst the ghosts of the film industry. Like, that's where Star Wars was born. That's where Dr. Strangelove was shot. That's where, like, all of the, I believe they had a 007, stage, because they shot a lot of the James Bond movies there. So you're going to audition at Pinewood Studio. Oh, by the way, Stellan Skarsgård will be there. Okay.
Is that all?
No pressure. And
None at all.
The person was like, yeah, but don't worry about it. And she's like,
yep.
Yeah. But no, she was so good. And in that scene was excellent, because there was such a, here you have this guy, like, Lonnie's deep, dude. Lonnie's the dude who, like, Luthen preached at straight up and gave that incredible monologue in season 1 about how he gave everything.
Everything.
And here's a dude who's, like, living this, and Clea shows up, and she just, like, grabs him by the arm and is like, here's what we're going to do. And shakes him up. And is, like, able to level him and be like, you think you're in this? Oh. And yeah, that whole thing, that tension was so great. Oh my gosh. I was on edge watching that. And it's also because it's great because you, in a way, like, you're expecting Krennic to understand what's going on, but then you realize, like, oh, Krennic is just totally bloviating right now and just, like, entertaining himself and everybody else, and is missing this thing happening here.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that's so great. And a little bit of foreshadowing with everything that happens with Dedra later on.
I still think it's Dedra.
It's not.
It's Dedra.
It's sort of like, back when Howard Cosell, some people think it's Zaire. It's not.
Yep. I mean, what do people remember? Howard Cosell saying Zaire. So I'm telling you.
Zaire. They remember being in Zaire. He was.
I hear you. I feel you.
Do you?
But you're wrong. All right. So anything else in these 4, 5, and 6? Let me see. I think that was it. Oh, and then sorry, I leave out the part where, Cassian goes to Gorham. He feels the rebels are not prepared. Gorman. God dang it.
Gorham is down the road from me, dude.
This is because you keep correcting me.
No,
everything is messed up now because you keep correcting me.
It's because you keep getting it wrong.
Gorman. Because of Gorman. Oh,
You're
God.
wrong.
Yeah, thank you, Bernie. Good Lord.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
But we have Cassian who goes to Gorman and determines that the rebels are too immature or too, not quite ready for action.
Which is pretty rich coming from him.
Yes, and so Vel and Cinta are reunited, so they have a moment, but they and it was interesting to see how what Cassian assessed actually kind of came true. Like, they're trying to set some ground rules with these people, and it's like they're dealing with children. Like, it's like, no, don't carry a gun. And what does the guy do? He carries a gun.
Well, but at the same time, like, you kind of get it. Like,
yeah.
And that's the danger, of course, in any situation like that, is because you have people who are like, listen, I know better. And they're like, no, you don't. You're not here. You don't. And disregarding the fact that, like, they've gone through this.
Yeah.
And yeah. And oh my gosh, that scene with Dummy there and Vel at the end. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worse than anyone shouting at you ever.
Yep. What I found interesting about that scene too is the guy that causes the entire thing where Cinta gets shot. Not the guy who shoots Cinta, but the guy who provoked the guy who did shoot Cinta. Yes. Is the first guy there to carry her. he's the one who picks her up. Like, and I thought that was an interesting detail because it's almost like he realizes what his role in all of this was. Like, he wasn't the guy that pulled the trigger, but he was the guy that provoked the guy to pull the trigger.
Well, and he ends up being one of the leaders.
And he ends up becoming one of the leaders. And so,
and I think that's, and
I thought that was interesting.
There is that difference. There's the people who, okay, I don't want to make this like a, there's two types of people. There's Beatles people and Elvis people, but there's folks who kind of understand like the responsibility side of it and the weight of things, and there's other people who are just like, no, I can do this, yeehaw, and they're like all action, and you got Dummy there with the blaster who was told not to bring a blaster and brought a blaster and ended up like shooting somebody inadvertently, and the other person is like, this is what needs to be done. This is terrible and you were wrong. This guy was dumb and this and that and the other. And maybe I shouldn't have come out here. Maybe I should, but this is what needs to be done now. And I understand what this means,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's heartbreaking in that, but it's also at that moment where you're like, at the end of the day, like, he seems like a good dude,
Yep.
And he has a lovely singing voice, as we found out later.
That we did. All right. Well, I think we've spent enough time on 4 through 6. Now let's get to the probably yes.
Could we take a short break? I just need to go use. Okay. Listen,
Yes.
Deidre, I need to go use the little boys' room. Can we
Please do.
time out for 30 seconds?
Please do.
Thank you.
I might grab some water myself.
You see, I'm trying to help you out too.
I appreciate that.
Always interesting when I go to use the bathroom at this time of night and Kaylin's still awake.
Oh, jeez. Oh, boy.
And then I come out of the bathroom and suddenly the light's off.
Yeah.
All right. So oh my gosh, it is 10 of 12 here. I did not realize that.
We got to wrap this up soon, don't we?
I know. Yeah, but we will make this work. Okay.
All right. So now we get to what I consider to be probably the trilogy of episodes that is just, I don't know. I think it is head and shoulders above anything, not just in Star Wars, but overall. I think it is just such an amazing 3 episodes that really kind of brings a climax and then really just kind of just continues to ramp it up, from there somehow, and that is 7, 8, and 9. Messenger, Who Are You, and episode 9, Welcome to the Rebellion. This is basically in Uncle Todd's favorite date format, BBY2. So we are 2 years out from the Battle of Yavin. But the rebels have begun coordinating their operations on Yavin 4. So we now see the beginnings of the rebel base on Yavin. And now we have an episode here where to me, this episode is almost like the setting of the chess pieces. Like this is everyone's kind of getting into position. We know Cyril is on Gorman. Deidre's on Gorman. They're getting ready to. Sorry, Deidre is on Gorman.
Gorman.
Basically getting ready to carry out the operation. Although she finds herself supplanted by Captain Kaido, who is as much of a mustache twirling villain as you can get. Like this guy, and we'll get into it in 8. This is a guy who cracks a smile when chaos starts to break out amongst the crowd, and
it's weird because he supplants her in a way, but as he says, like, I'm the trigger, you're the finger, which I'm like, ew, like, I get what you're saying, but man, you managed to make that even creepier than it sounded originally. Like it's just dripping with ick.
Yeah.
Like he is a guy who you're like, I really hope we see him get a blaster bolt through the head, and I don't think we do. Like,
how is that not an HR call in some way?
Oh, totally should have been. Even in the Empire, that should.
You're the finger.
We need to see you down at the office.
Oh boy,
you have to go through some sensitivity training. Yeah, there's some things that we need to talk about.
But it is interesting how, and we haven't really talked a lot about Bix, but kind of the she has that cloud of her past abuse and trauma kind of hanging over her for most of the series. We see
Which
her,
doesn't that get resolved in this arc? Or is that at the beginning of 10 to 12?
No, I mean, in a way it does. I wouldn't say it's resolved, but I would say.
Oh, but don't they kill Gorst?
Can I get a thought out for a moment?
No, I'm sorry.
One moment. Give me a moment. So I feel like in these 3, this is where Bix finds her purpose and sets Cassian on a course to find his purpose. That's what I think goes on, because 1 through 6, we see her struggling. We see her struggling in 1 through 3. She gets attacked again and deals with that. We see in 4 through 6, she's using really just medicating herself on drugs to kind of deal with what she's dealing with.
Do they ever say what that is? Because I mean, I know in the Star Wars universe, there's spice, which they talk about.
She just refers to it as something that helps her sleep.
Okay.
They don't really identify it. But here in 7 is where, and this is what's interesting, is there's this force healer, and she tries to heal Cassian. And she senses him, and there's definitely something different going on. And she tells Bix that he is going to be a messenger. And I think this, which is interesting, because now Bix starts to think about this and sees Cassian as, kind of being too not reliant on her, but falling to their relationship. And as we see, he wants to prioritize that over being in the rebellion. Like he wants to run off with her and just try to build a life with her outside of all of this.
Yeah, she's his out.
And she takes that into her hands and makes a choice that basically, puts him in a position of, having to, like follow through with what he's doing with the rebellion. Or, as I just said, I think in a lot of ways she sets him on his course of purpose, because now she's out there. She's like, go and win. And when we win, we'll be together again. And so I think for him, it in a lot of ways, this is the motivation he needs, because it's like, now he's going to just do what he needs to do to freaking win this thing so that he can be back together with her, which is, kind of smart on her part. You use their relationship and like, I don't want to say use it, but she knows what drives him, and she knows that she's going to be a stumbling block for him. And so she takes herself out of the equation so that he can realize his full potential of who he's supposed to be. And once he does that, then they can be together, assuming, of course, that he survives it, which is not quite what happens. So,
which, spoiler alert, no.
Not at all. But I think 7 was called The Messenger was very apropos, because that is where this force healer, kind of says, you are special. You are meant to do something special here. And he doesn't want to believe it, but Bix really buys into it. And but because of the trauma and everything, Willman finds out that that Dedra is on Gorman, and so now Andor goes with Wilmon to basically assassinate her. And that kind of takes us into 8, which is now the beginning of and is the Gorman massacre, where the protests start in the central square of Palmo, where
which is totally like orchestrated by the Empire.
Oh, I was just going to say that you see how everything is put into play to make this turn into an absolute disaster. They bring in young soldiers who are not prepared to do riot squad duty or anything. They just get completely just not obliterated by the crowd, but pushed around, and they give the Empire the ammo they need to start rolling in more severe measures. We see the Imperials have snipers up in the buildings who start to take people out with
the snipers are actually the first ones to fire on
the crowd,
on the green troops. Remember, that was the first shot was
fired. I'm sorry, you're right, yes,
they totally set the whole thing off. Like the crowd's jostling them, but the Empire snipers are the ones that actually shoot at their own troops, which leads to that that other Kaito or whatever.
Yeah, Kaito, making the call for them to let loose, and then and then the really just visually horrifying thing was just the KX droids coming out and just starting to lay waste to people, and you start to understand like how powerful.
Oh my gosh!
If we didn't already know from season 1 where one of those droids grabbed Andor by the throat and just pushed him up against a wall like he was nothing, to see them just start swinging fists and just knocking people, like the Incredible Hulk would.
Well, but it's like, it's one thing to shoot people or whatever. It's just brute force. It's blunt force trauma. These friggin' droids are doing, and it's kind of not what you've expected from Star Wars. Like everything is a laser sword or someone gets shot, and here it is like, no, we're just going to yeet you across here, and the impact on the stone is what kills you.
Yeah.
Sheesh. Brutal.
Here Cyril and Dedra have, Cyril here to me, like this is where I thought, is he going to go a path where he joins the rebellion? He starts like to see him react the way he does to the events that are going on, to see like he definitely has this look on his face, like I have a hand in this. I caused this.
Yeah.
And he doesn't understand what it is yet. And then he goes to Dedra and he gets very physical with her because he knows at this point he's being played.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is going on? And then he finds out what the real reason is. And then that's it. He walks away from her. He's disgusted.
Which is interesting, seeing that power dynamic shift.
Yeah.
Because very much, I mean, she's totally in control of everything in their relationship.
Yeah.
And just to watch her kind of like wilt is like it's interesting, because it really, then you start questioning everything about her character.
Yeah.
It's insane. The one nit I will pick here, and I feel this is probably my biggest nit to pick. It's probably the size of a small chihuahua. In this season and in this series, is watching Cyril mosey around the Gorman massacre seemingly forever. People are getting shot, burned, tossed around like a rag doll, and Cyril is doing this. For like a half an hour.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm like, I know stormtroopers are bad shots, but for frack's sake.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that to me was like, okay, this is the one area that someone should have said, maybe a few less reaction shots to point out the fact that Cyril is still standing in the middle of this massacre and nary a scratch on him as people are running and things are happening, and he's still standing there. At this point, he's the only person left in the square to shoot, and nobody is shooting him.
Yeah.
Until he spots Cassian taking aim at Dedra, and then he decides to, he friggin' goes off his nut. It's like, that's the one nit I have to pick, is that even as I'm watching it, and because I only watched it for one time because I binged it, but I mean, as I was watching it, I'm like, come on. Again with the reaction shot, like, we're cutting away to this, we're coming back to the cutting away. I'm like, you can't cut back to him. Oh, we're going to cut back to him again. Okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, they can't cut back to, and they're cutting back to him again. Son of a bitch, how freaking, like, wrap it up. That was the one thing that for me took away from the emotional impact of all that, was just, surely he can't still be alive.
Yeah.
And then for them to be wrestling around forever, it's like, it's sort of like Pat McAfee being in Gunther's sleeper for a half an hour. It's like, how's he not dead? He has no combat training. This is not a dude who is like handy with his dukes,
Yeah.
And Cassian's having all he can handle with him. Like, I know he's pissed, but still, what? Yeah, that was the one part that kind of took me out of it a little bit, I got to admit.
The way I rationalize that, though, and I think this comes back to the line that Cassian says to him, which is, "Who are you?" is we see these different faces of Cyril. We see Cyril as, subservient to the Empire. We see Cyril now as the strong man with Dedra, who now has a spine and is not, being told what to do and where to go, and is instead making the demands. We see Cyril looking, empathetic and respond, and somewhat accountable to what he's done when he witnesses the massacre around him, and his hand in that. And then we see Cyril revert back to what he was in season 1, which is this driven by this raw passion for justice, and sees the guy who got away that he wants to, to get. And when he points the gun at Cassian, and Cassian looks at him and says, "Who are you?" and he starts to drop the gun, it's almost as if he has the revelation finally of, this guy who I've obsessed about has no idea who I am.
Yes.
Like, I do not matter to this person. Why am I like he just has this look like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I so obsessed with this person when they don't even care about me?
Mm-hmm.
This is not my mortal enemy. He doesn't even know who I am.
Yeah.
And so I think in that moment, that's when he pauses. But then in that moment is when he catches a bullet or a laser to the head. And that is the end of Cyril Karn. And
it's not even like it's someone who's aiming to take him out. It's just like a random shot.
A shot from essentially someone who we thought was nonviolent and who was
that's
pushed.
right. Yes. Okay.
It
wasn't a random shot.
It was the Gorman rebel leader who was preaching nonviolence to his followers, and was really warning them about what today was going to be, what that day was going to be for them. And I think, and he and Cyril had an exchange earlier in the episode where Cyril throws him to the ground, and we don't understand the motivation exactly there, but he pulls a gun and he shoots him, and he kills him, and that's the thing that saves Andor. So it's interesting, what could have been with him, but I think his character ends up standing as this example of someone who doesn't know who they are, who, one moment's getting pushed around, another moment who is pushing around, another moment is taking responsibility in some ways for their actions and feeling accountable and empathetic. And yet he's just all over the map. Like, I think the episode captured all these different faces of Cyril, and why, at the end of the day, he doesn't know who he is. And why that question resonated with him, because he could have just pulled the trigger and killed Andor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, when you think about it, like, why didn't he do that? He could have just done it, but he gets that question, and it makes him reconsider. And so, so I mean, they do like we could spend an entire episode on just episode 8, because of
totally. Yeah.
The song that the Gorman people were singing over and over again. Just how they built up to this crescendo. Like, you just have the sense of dread from the beginning of the episode all the way through, then the crescendo of the action, and then the aftermath. You see Andor escaping, and not that it was a theme throughout every single one of the trilogy of episodes, but at the end of 3, you see him flying away in the TIE fighter with his friends with, tears in his eyes because he just lost his friend. At the end of 6, I don't think you see him fly away, but at the end of this one, you see him flying away from Gorman, and you hear, the radios asking for help, asking for people to come and help the Gorman people.
Well, and it's the girlfriend of his buddy Wilmot, who's staying.
Yeah.
And it's like they're getting the word out and knowing like,
yeah,
we're probably not getting out of here, but we need to make sure that people know what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
such a powerful episode.
Oh yeah.
Powerful episode.
And like I mistakenly thought what happened in the last kind of arc was this is where we get, rebellions are built on hope, said by the hotel clerk.
Yeah.
Which was actually a thing that I love how, Gilroy kind of put himself into a corner here, and he had to kind of scramble to be like, okay, well, where did that come from? Because in a way, it's not a very Cassian thing to say,
right?
In Rogue One,
right?
And I guess his son had asked him like, so where did that come from? And he's like, well, it came from Rogue One. And
yeah.
He's like, yeah, but where did it come from there? Oh, someone said it before Cassian. Like, no, they didn't. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And for it to come from this hotel clerk.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of poetic.
Yeah.
It's kind of this, because again, a lot of the rebellion comes from these nondescript people.
Yeah. 100%.
And then I loved in episode 9 we get the welcome to the rebellion thing, where now Mon Mothma is really coming face to face with this, like what this means, to the point of like seeing a couple of people like get shot right in front of her, and her reactions being like so aghast, and Andor being like, dude, this is like Wednesday, come on, let's move your ass. This is an average morning before I've had coffee, sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's such great storytelling, great storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, and that takes us to 9, like you said, and I love how the episode builds to her speech. The way she spends time practicing it, and Bail Organa, not Jimmy Smits this time. Who do we have playing this again?
I don't. Is Jimmy Smits still with us?
He is. He could not get away to.
Okay. Because he was in Rogue One.
Benjamin Bratt,
who did a great job.
Yes, he did a great job keeping the spirit of what Jimmy Smits kind of imbued in Bail Organa going.
And I feel like he added a couple little wrinkles that were his own, which was nice.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's not, and also in episode 9, let's not forget like the kind of the betrayal of her, of Mon Mothma's, like, I don't know, security guards, secretary.
Well, there was two
whatever.
things going on. One, Organa arranged for her security detail to get her out of there, and that security detail was compromised by, there was one agent in there that was
well, no, but there was a dude who was
there was her driver.
Luthen. Well, no, there's the driver who's with ISB, and then there was the dude who was like her aide assistant, who's been kind of there, and that was someone who had been working with Luthen, I believe.
Oh, right, yes.
She finds out, and then she fires him, and then he ends up helping her get her out of there, and she kind of has to be like, "Yeah, this is awkward that I kind of sort of owe my life to you, who I just fired about an hour and a half ago. Yeah, sorry about that."
Yeah, I'm not seeing his name, but
yeah,
let me see if I can
but
find
he was like he was a guy who's been kind of in the background. I'd noticed, but then in that episode, like his character, like he did a lot of heavy lifting in very few lines and very few scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So the writing for that character, but also the performance and the directing of the whole package of that was really good to kind of get the most out of that character, I felt.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to find that.
Good luck. I couldn't find that Tay guy who, because it feels like there's a cast of thousands in these episodes. I couldn't find that guy. I'm glad that you knew his name. The Mon Mothma's old friend there who got like Clemenza'd at the, beginning of this thing.
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm going through the.
But I mean, even the betrayal within the Organa group that was going to get her out was interesting. In that I didn't necessarily know how many of them were with the betrayer. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I know there's a Judas here, but is there an assistant, or is it like a lone person? So there is that kind of doubt within that, which I thought was interesting.
I can't find the character's name who you're talking about, but I think
either.
they're a character also that was portrayed in either Rebels or I don't know if he's from season 1, but I think he was in Rebels as well. But yeah,
really?
he was this agent that was helping her. I'm pretty sure. I got to find the name though.
She thought he was like just her assistant, and then it turned
Right.
out like he was working for Luthen the whole time. Which
and she gets upset with Luthen because it's like, you know, she's feeling played, you know, from the rebel side, not realizing that you know, someone has infiltrated Organa's security detail, and you know, that's where Andor comes in and takes them out. And so I love the drama and the pacing of her escape. I mean, first of all, not to overshoot it, but her speech was well done.
Oh, it was amazing.
Again, very timely in some ways,
and culminating with the guy who is, you know, kind of over all this thing, but does not appear.
Right.
Is the sharkiest of sharks of the Jaws, you know, metaphor here of menacing but not really seen. Yeah, we finally get the name Palpatine dropped here.
Yep.
And spat out with vim and vigor, if you will.
Well, I love the line, you know, the monster that's coming for us all, you know, which kind of is exactly what happens. But yeah, no, I thought it was just a great episode. Yeah, and again, going back to what we talked about, how the discipline being showed and not over explaining everything. You know, she doesn't have a final moment with Perrin. She doesn't have a final moment with her daughter. It's just she's at the Senate. She's going to make a speech. Organa tees it up. She gives the speech. I love how they're trying to shut the feed down. They can't. This is the part where I think it would have been helpful, you know, to at least have understood that Skulden is, you know, kind of running the network, and that there was some. I mean, you got the sense when the guy tried to get into the room to turn it off and couldn't, and those two workers there are kind of like, oh, the key's over here, and they're just kind of like smiling at each other, like. You got the sense there was some help there to elongate the time for her to give the speech. But I think it would have been interesting to at least have understood that a little bit more, rather than just being a random occurrence of more of Luthen's agents kind of, just, just kind of being sprinkled everywhere. And so, but no, we see her get, taken away. And I love how they don't necessarily retcon what was established in, now I haven't gotten to this part in Rebels yet. I read about this, but she gives another speech, and she is with Gold Squadron, and I believe is also being transported by the Ghost, which is the Rebels, which is the ship in Rebels that Hera Syndulla is flying. And they stay true to that. By Andor is the one who extracts her out, but then she makes her way with the Gold Squadron, and he ends up returning to Yavin. But that's where Bix then leaves him a video and departs in, kind of the cover of night to start her life elsewhere, but to free him of her so that he can focus on his purpose. And but this is also where we get the birth of K2SO, the stolen KX unit. We actually see the KX unit get kind of taken out during the Gorman massacre toward the end as he's fleeing, and Andor decides to take it with him, and that ends up getting resurrected as K2SO,
which is interesting in that he shows up on Yavin, and it's like, I'm the one who saved Mon Mothma, but you're gonna escort her in, and you're gonna get all the credit here. And oh, by the way, I captured this KX unit, and I'm we got all the pieces, I think, and just kind of walks away like, deal with that. Not only did I save your leader, but I also got you this incredible piece of technology.
Amen and amen.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah, basically. And that brings us now to the final 3 episodes, which, I got to say 7, 8, and 9, probably the best episodes in terms of climax and really hitting hard and kind of delivering some gut punches. But man, these 3 episodes really closed it out strong. These were the closers. And, if you told me that an entire episode would be devoid of Andor in episode 10, that it would be the origin story of Luthen and Clea.
Oh my gosh, heart-wrenching.
Yeah, and I would not have believed it. I mean, again, we're talking 3 episodes in the year BBY1. That's right. You're gonna correct me on the names. I'm gonna keep going with the year. So
that's
BBY1.
Because I'm right. This is wrong.
Fair enough. But nonetheless, we get a view into Luthen's, his world, and I want to talk about, like, when we get to the end of this. I know we're running long here, but I do want to talk about.
I love how you say we're running long, like this is not a normal occurrence.
Oh no, we do try to wrap up in a reasonable amount of time.
We had 2 short shows last week. That was the aberration.
Yeah. Well,
let's face it.
Wanted to keep it going, but we do. So Luthen learns from Lonnie about, he finally understands the end game of what Gorman was intended to be, and that is the Death Star. Lonnie doesn't call it that. He just says they're working on a weapon. They've been working on this weapon for 10 years, and Luthen realizes that this thing is probably much bigger than they realize. And so he and Clea start to go through, their process of and the fact that they've probably been discovered, and now they've got to, cover their tracks to some degree. Love the conversation between Dedra and Luthen.
Oh my gosh.
Especially the line that he says about how there's 2 provincial pieces that are not.
There's 2 pieces that are of. I can't remember the exact words.
It's something provenance or something like that.
There's two pieces in this gallery that are not quite established whether they're real or not.
Yes,
and it's
both of them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so good.
And so she finally gets her Axis that she's her character of Axis that she's been after. But Luthen, in true Luthen way, I love the line he says to her. He's like, the rebellion's not here anymore. It's out there. He's like, there's an entire galaxy to disgust you.
Mm-hmm.
Letting her know just like how big and vast this has turned into. And then he goes, and I love how they do this, because it's implied, of course, that he, is trying to commit suicide, but they don't show it to you visually. You know what he's doing, but you don't actually see him do it. Mm-hmm. And so he hurts himself. They take him to a hospital. They're keeping him on life support. And then, and I love the background we get with Clea and him, because there's an exchange they have on their ship, on the Hallcraft, where he just says to her, they're having an exchange. I forget the entire dialogue, but he says to her, "Move." And she kind of gives him a smirk, and we don't understand it. Like, it doesn't make any sense in terms of the conversation they're having. But when we find out in the origin story that he tells her, and he has, again, it's just these great lines that Stellan Skarsgård has, but he's like, this is what we do. We lose and we lose and we lose and we lose until we're ready. Mm-hmm. And then when we're ready, we move. And I'll tell you when it's time to move. And so that was him giving her the word that this is probably coming down on us, and it's time for you to make your move. Mm-hmm. And we see, full on Born Identity Clea in action, where she's just taking people out left, right, and center.
Jason Bourne / John Wick, just like mowing through people, but also doing it with a very, very clever way, like using a lot of intelligence.
The actress that plays her, Elizabeth, what did I say? Loa? What did I say her name was?
No, she's fantastic in this.
Let me find her name. Give her credit where credit's due. Elizabeth Dulau. She channels badassery in a way that I have not seen. Like, even in season 1, like, she put Luthen in his place a couple times. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what we're doing. She just has this look about her. She is all business. And this episode, she really shines. And that's the story here. This is Luthen's death. You know, I always assumed Luthen would go down in a blaze of glory. That it would be, you know, yes, he gets caught, but he goes down, you know, as a sacrifice. You know, taking the Empire or part of the Empire down with him. But in this case, he retains control the entire time. He decides when he dies. He decides, you know, he has the last word with Dedra. You know, Dedra's victory is a hollow one because now she's been taken into custody. And this just is an entire story around Luthen, you know, really his death and living up to what he predicted in that monologue from season 1 with Lonnie, where, you know, he is fighting for a sunrise that he's never going to see, and he does not. He ends up in a room by himself.
Yeah, Lonnie don't see it either.
Right. Yep. Oh, the other thing we leave out here too is the fact that he kills Lonnie.
Yeah.
That once Lonnie gives him the info, you know, again, Luthen's all about cutting loose ends, and so he takes Lonnie out. We find out Lonnie gets his info from Dedra, which, by the way, we
also find out Lonnie has a family.
Yes,
which makes it.
Well, we knew that from season 1 because that was when he approached Luthen before that soliloquy he has.
Yeah, but you realize at this point just how deep he's in, and he has his wife and his kids secreted away.
Yeah,
but he's counting on Luthen. Like, he's going to Luthen like, okay, I've done all this for you, and now you're going to do for me. And Luthen's like, yeah, I'm going to do for you, but not the way you think.
Yeah.
And now you're like, oh crap! So his wife and kid probably did not make it out of this.
Yeah, that's fair.
It also it's kind of like, and this makes Andor on whatever place that he goes to at the beginning of Rogue One kind of makes sense, because now it's
Ring
like
of Kafrene.
Ring of Kafrene. Like, this makes sense. Like, this is who Andor learned from.
Yeah. Which again goes to the whole idea of when you watch Rogue One. Now I understand what Gilroy means and what Diego Luna meant when he said you need to watch Rogue One after you watch season 2, and you will watch it in a very different way.
Yeah, and
I have a couple comments about that, because you do watch it in a very different way. So yeah, just you know, again, we don't have enough time and can't do it enough justice. But episode 10, just a great episode. You know, and again, Luthen being a former Imperial soldier who, you know, when he's on the ship and they're murdering, you know, Clea's people, and he's just like, make it stop. You know, it's just this desire to end the madness, to end the violence, and you know, he picks up Clea as kind of a surrogate daughter, and just their interaction. The girl who plays Clea when she's younger does a phenomenal job.
Oh,
you know,
terrific.
Continuing to keep that like a lot of times it's like, who's really in charge here? Is it Luthen or is it the girl? Because the girl seems to have, you know, she has the strength about her, which, you know, continues on with Clea when she's an adult. So just a great episode. Episode 11, Who Else Knows? Dedra now, Dedra.
Thank you.
This is a great interrogation with Krennic. Now we see Dedra in the same position as Cyril was in season 1. Same, like, I don't know if it's the same cell, but similar situation. Is it the same cell?
Yes.
Okay. So she knows what's going on behind those windows. She knows all of this. But here's the thing that I thought was genius about this episode, with what Krennic kind of elaborates on. And what we end up finding out is that the entire reason the Death Star plans, or even the Death Star, comes to knowledge is because of Dedra.
She got added to the signal chat.
If she...
Not my fault. It's not my fault.
Oh, that was the kill shot, ladies and gentlemen, right there. Good God almighty. Uncle Todd bringing the heavy lumber at 12:26, and you're watching Perspectives.
Just saying. But no, it is. It's like this consolidation of the information, and the fact that, like, the best part was, and someone pointed this out in something I read today. I wish I could credit this, but it was like one of those things that pops up on Facebook, and it was the fact that, like, when Krennic is like, say the word, singular.
Yeah.
He's expecting stardust, the code word. No, Dedra's in so deep that she's read beyond this. Now she's going with like the rumors and the this and the that. And so when she says Death Star, that little cringe that he has, he's like, okay, so you've bought in. Now you're with the conspiracy theorists and all like the weirdo, like the tinfoil hat people. Like, no, this is serious business, you know?
Right.
I thought that was so great. So great. And the fact that she threatens Cyril with winding up in a cell in the Outer Rim.
Yep.
And where does Dedra end up? Even in spite of like trying to help her former underling.
Hey, aren't you?
Yeah. Isn't that floor electrified?
A little bit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it was that, but that was chilling. That was one of those moments when it's like, this is who Krennic is. And you like, again, you're like, oh my gosh, the Empire did have competent officers here and there.
Well, and the way that he says to her as he walks behind her and then plants his finger on her head about how, Jung, accessed her system, for 3 hours the night before, that she's the reason this information is getting out because of all the scavenging. Now she comes back with a great line. And I think, I was telling a coworker of mine who's big into this. I said, what was great was, what they put on display, like Gilroy shows this again, where as great, as big, and as nasty as the Empire is, they never failed at dispensing with, at the first sign of failure. And the same thing happens with Partagaz as well. When the competent soldiers and competent officers they had have a moment of failure or mistake, and the way they dispense them, and they are basically signing their own death warrant. Like, Dedra wasn't wrong. She knew exactly what was going on. She knew what the rebels, she suspected what the rebels were up to back in season 1. She had enough foresight to think differently than the Imperials did. She, found essentially, Luthen, but it was all the steps she had to take to get there that ultimately doomed her. I mean, really what episodes 10 through 12 are in a lot of ways the fall of Dedra Meero, because ironically, after capturing the character that she's been after for all this time, she is now on the slow descent into hell, basically. And she ends in hell. She ends in Narcana 5 or something like Narcana 5, where she is in a prison and she has no escape. She doesn't have the will and doesn't have the strength of what Andor has, and what he did to get out. But she is damned now to a lifetime of labor under the Imperial regime. And so I just found it very interesting how, I was wondering where her character was going to end up. I wondered, would she fall in with the rebels somehow? Would she have a change? Like, would Cyril's death at Gorman and the Gorman massacre change her? Especially when we saw her in the elevator.
Was she going to be promoted and they're just going to write off as she's on the Death Star when it blows up? Or
yes, I remember reading a fan had a theory about that. How appropriate if she ends up on the Death Star and, ends up dying in the explosion. But no, she is, as I said to my coworker, she's actually doomed to a fate worse than death, which is to be in that prison, because we saw what that prison was and how it was this hellscape of just constant work, and you're just a cog in a machine and no one cares about you. But yeah, just to see her fall was just incredible. And then this also teed up the fall of Partagaz, because he's leading the operation to extract or to get to Clea, who uses this device to communicate with the rebels. Melchi and Andor and K2SO make their way to, extract her out. And, this episode ends when they're kind of cornered, with K2SO trying to come to their rescue. But but Partagaz is leading the operation, and then K2 comes in and just cleans house, gets them out of there.
Path.
Here is a path.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I didn't equate the two with Partagaz, ending up paying a price for that, but it makes sense in a way because they had him cornered and they lost him. And so I love, and I was kind of curious. Again, it's one of those scenes you watch over and over again and think about what was the character thinking, what was his motives at that moment in time. But he's listening to, I'm trying to think of his name. Here, of course, they don't have it in the description. 1 second.
What is it? The dude who went to Dedra and asked her for help?
No, the guy who wrote the manifesto, Nemec.
Oh, yes.
He's listening to Nemec's manifesto, and when this other officer comes in, he clicks it off, and he says, "There's no stopping this, is there?" And he's talking about the recording. Like, clearly that recording must be broadcasting somehow. And the officer says, "No, it's out there." But I also think Partagaz is, as he's listening to what Nemec is saying, I think he's, in my head at least, I'm thinking he's realizing they're on a doomed course at this point.
Yeah.
Like, they can't stop this. This is going to grow. And to Nemec, and I love Nemec's damning line when he says that, something to the effect of tyranny is...
the control is unnatural.
The control is unnatural, but the fact that you have to work so hard to maintain it.
Yes.
And you can see on Partagaz's face this realization of, yeah, we've had to work really hard to maintain this order. This isn't going to last.
Well, and the fact is, like, we've worked this hard and we haven't controlled anything.
Right.
Like, all it took was one person. All it took was one, like, exuberant little hustler.
Yep.
Who just was a busybody and was scrounging and hoarding information. That's all it took is this one person who's not even middle management.
Yep.
And this is bringing the whole thing down.
Yeah. Yep.
And we worked so hard. Look at how much money is invested in it. Because, I mean, there is a cost to all this. Look at how much money is invested in the Death Star. Look at how much money it takes to build a Star Destroyer. Look at what we've done. Look at all this. And all it takes is one person putting all the information in one place.
Kablamo.
And all it takes is opportunity. And that person and someone like Partagaz who has been another person who is, like, so in control of everything along the whole way, just having that sudden realization of like, yeah, there's no way we can do this. This is unnatural. Like, there's no way that you can control enough. We can't. We're playing a perpetual game of whack-a-mole, and we're never going to get them all.
Yeah. I love the scene when we ask the officer to leave so he can collect his thoughts, and when you hear the blaster shot and you see the flinch in the stormtroopers, and he immediately just kind of holds them off and then kind of bows his head a little bit. Like, I thought that was such a great touch of he knew exactly what was going to happen. And so really, our last two kind of antagonists have been dealt with at that point. Partagaz is done. Daedra, we don't quite know yet. What her fate is, but most of the rest of the episode is in Yavin. Once they get Clea out of Coruscant, it's on Yavin, and it's really kind of interesting how the conversation with Cassian and Vel as they drink to Luthen, as they as he's trying, and this is what I find so interesting is, like, I don't know why, but it seems like no matter, and I saw this in Rogue One too, it's like any news about this weapon with the Empire is how the leadership just meets it with a lack of, or not a lack of, with a lot of skepticism. Like, they don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe the Empire is building something that could really, kind of bring a reign of terror over the galaxy. But what reason do they have not to? I mean, that's what I found interesting. It's like, why would Luthen lie about that? Why, if I brought you any other news, you would probably consider it. Why am I, when I bring you this news, it's not, no one wants to believe it because it came from Luthen,
because it's so big. There's times that as human beings, like, we just can't comprehend something that is like, it's that gigantic. It's that overwhelmingly big.
Mm-hmm.
We want, or it's that out of the ordinary, because we can adapt to so many different circumstances. And you can, when you get delivered this piece of news, you're like, okay, all that stuff that you knew, it's small potatoes. Like, I can't even comprehend of it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I thought that they did really well here in season 2, is like in this last arc, kind of demonstrating like how fragile the rebellion was, and then it the kind of their unwillingness to accept this news, even though it's like you say, like, there's no reason for Luthen to lie, to make this shit up, and then all of a sudden, like, and then he's going to knife himself, and like, this is his last big joke on us, ha ha ha. Oh, good old Luthen, that jerk. Like, how does that work how does that logically work out? But it does a great job of setting up what happens in Rogue One, where essentially the Rebel Alliance dissolves into chaos and dissolves into inaction, to a point where parts of the rebellion are withdrawing, and like, we're not going to do this until Andor and Jyn go off on their rogue mission. And that unifies, almost in a way of like, well, we have to do this. And then everyone else is like, screw it. I mean, if we're going to go, we're going to go. We have to now. We're committed, and that's kind of the impetus. And it shows, like, it gives a little more background to why Cassian would come back to Jyn at that moment of like, I've dealt with these idiots before. I know exactly what you just went through. And you know what? For that reason, let's go on this one-way mission.
Yep.
It totally makes sense then. You're like, you get it.
Yep.
It fills in a little bit of a blank that you're like, oh, well, surely, no, everyone's noble. It's like, no, people are freaking waffling and cowardly and stupid and ignorant and all this, all shades of the rainbow,
Yeah.
Yes. It kind of leads you right there.
Yeah. Clea is recovering and is struggling with finding her role. I thought they did a good job of, really kind of focusing in on her loss, and kind of her loss of identity in a lot of ways, with Luthen being gone. What is her role now? Like,
well, not Luthen being gone. Like, she's the one who, she kills him. Even though she does it for all the right reasons.
No, sure, she kills him, but there's an element I felt of a loss of identity for her, though. Like, she's no longer, running this sort of secret sort of thing with him. And so when she goes to Yavin and she's looking around and realizing, like, most of the people here probably don't want to see me. They hate Luthen. There's, and I think this is where Saw Gerrera is helpful, is because in a lot of ways Luthen is viewed in a similar way as Saw. And so, she feels like she's in enemy territory. And so I think, the conversation Vel has with her is great. She has that moment where she's, she doesn't fully smile, but she just kind of sees how everyone is working together. And, and in my head, at least, I think what's echoing in her mind is what Andor, said to her. And I think, or Vel, I forget who said it to her, but just how, none of this is here without Luthen. Like, Luthen helped build all of this. No one would be here right now if not for him.
I think they both said it in a way.
Did they both? Yeah.
Andor basically said it almost in the words you said it, but I think Vel also kind of reiterates that. And I wasn't trying to contradict you when I just pointed out that she was the one who, like, ultimately was the end of Luthen. It was that added trauma. Like, she's carrying this like, not only just that he's gone, but like, she had to be the instrument of him being gone. Even if it was for the betterment of the rebellion, even if it was for the betterment of Luthen, even if that is what Luthen would have wanted. Like, there is still the weight of that on her. That's all I want to point out there.
No, 100%. And then, we get at the end Andor making his way really to the ship to head toward the Ring of Kafrene, which is the beginning of Rogue One. And he has that moment where he sees the Force healer, and she just kind of looks at him, and he gives her a little bit of a nod. We also get in that sequence, a shot of, really who's left, Clea. We see Vel, and I love the shot of Vel and Mon, because they are no longer the aristocrats. They are the people who had to give all of that up and are now sitting with the commoners and are part of this thing that they don't know where it's going to go. They don't know what's coming next. We also see where Dedra lands, which is in Arcana 5. And I love how Gilroy does this, because he doesn't have to show anything more than her jumpsuit and the cell, and we know exactly what that means and the gravity of it. She is done. She is that is where her life ends, and it's fitting. I've read some articles too that brought out the fact that the Empire really is in a lot of ways a fascist regime, and how it kind of brings out the fact that fascism consumes everyone, even the ones who are supporting it. And so I thought it was an interesting play for her character to be one of those that, Partagas in a lot of ways was going to be the same way. He was on his way to something, maybe he was going to be imprisoned as well. And he probably knew better and took his life, but
he pulled the Shawshank Warden
he did.
exit plan.
Absolutely. But to see how she was one of the more competent, one of the more devoted Imperial officers, and really had the best intentions for the Empire, but in the end was the single point of failure. And that led to her being chastised, persecuted, and ultimately jailed for what we can imagine is the rest of her life, because of the revelation of this weapon now, and what that has set off. What's that?
I said, however long that might be.
However long that might be.
Might be a couple months, might be a couple of years.
Yes. But we also see, we talked about Perrin and, Mon Mothma's husband, and ending up with Skulden's wife, and just kind of being in this, like, medicated haze while the Imperial rule continues. Who else did we see? I know we saw, I want to say Bix for the end, but.
Well, so did you see that coming as the end scene? Because I sure as shooting didn't. I figured it was going to end with, like, because we were very much in the Cassian walk to his fate, getting dressed in the gear and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, we are doing the Iron Man suit up here. And I was expecting him to, like, get on the U-wing, which is, we now know that's what it's called. Or at least that's what I now know what it's called. And I expected literally for him to turn around for a second, the door to close, credits. That's what I expected.
Yeah.
And we didn't get that. Were you expecting that? Because I didn't see that coming at all.
I mean, I don't know what I expected. I had thought Bix was going to be killed, and that was going to be motivation for Cassian. The one little thing that I find odd, because I just watched Rogue One, is there were a couple moments where Jyn and Cassian share a look. And it's almost like a look of love. And it makes no sense knowing that Bix is alive, because Cassian, in my mind, or from what I understand from season 2, is that Cassian is continuing forward with the rebellion in service of reuniting with Bix at some point. And so, now again, Jyn and he do not share a kiss. They do not share anything romantic, but there's something about the way they look each other in the elevator on the way down as they walk out on the beach and, kind of fall to their fate, where you're kind of like, oh, I guess there's a little something here, It's a minor thing. I don't think it's the end be all end all of the story. I don't think it's a contradiction. It's just a little something that's odd that's in there. But I don't know what I expected for Bix. I was not thinking about a kid. I was not thinking that she was pregnant. I just thought that she would just be out there, and this would be, another one of those open-ended, unclosed loops, that an open loop that wasn't closed in the story, that she never gets to reunite with him because he ends up, sacrificing himself. And but I love how in a lot of ways it's kind of like it's not a Skywalker direct line, but it's kind of like the Skywalkers, right?
There is another. And I thought it was great she went back to that farm planet where they had a relationship with the people. It was great to see B2 EMO doing his little racing with his droid friend. And we're left on a note of hope. And Gilroy, I linked some articles. We're not gonna be able to talk in depth about them, but or really at all, but so they can be in the show notes. But he talks about the ending and how he wanted to leave the show on a hopeful note. And and I've even seen like some suggestions that do we end up finding out that what was Oscar Isaac's character in the Postquels?
Poe Dameron.
Do we end up finding out that Poe is like Andor's son or something like that? Because the timing does kind of line up for that, which would be kind of cool. So
coming summer 2028,
Rogue 2. Dun dun dun.
Oh, God, please, dear God, no.
But no, like what was your thought about the ending with Bix? Because I thought it was appropriate. I thought it was in line with the philosophy of Star Wars always ending on a note of hope, and
it was jarring. If you didn't, you get away with that ending. You get away with the entire last quarter of this story, because Gilroy said right out front, this is going to lead directly up to Rogue One. It's not it's not a prequel. It is going to butt up against Rogue One in much the same way that Rogue One abuts Episode 4. Like, you're going to be able to go right from one to the other. That gives you a lot of leeway. And having that moment makes a lot of sense when you realize the next thing that you are going to see is Cassian Andor meeting up with this dude that he is going to kill.
Yeah.
Like, that moment of like, okay, because you're seeing all this other, the tension is building, and then all of a sudden you get this moment of like, oh, there's hope. There's this thing that's going to continue on. Because the other thing is, like, we know how Rogue One ends. Like, you're watching this totally out of order. You already know that Cassian is a goner. You know that everybody here is gone. Or most the folks who matter the most, like Cassian, K2, K and all this, like, what their fate is. So this moment of like Bix holding her child in this field is this like, I really kind of need this, because the next part of this is going to kick me right in the feels for the next 2 hours. Like,
yeah.
So it totally makes sense in that context. But I did not see it coming. But at the end of it, I was like, I'm really glad that I had that, because it was, and I love how it could just be a thing, but I tend to think it's not. It felt like there was a couple extra seconds of space when they cut to black. It felt like there was a couple extra seconds of black before they brought up the first credit, just to kind of almost give you that it?
Yeah.
And it's it. It kind of, I wasn't expecting, but I thought it was perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a great ending. Not that I don't know if this was Gilroy's intent or not, but I love how they left it with a shot of Bix and the baby looking out, and maybe the baby isn't looking out at the horizon, but looking at the horizon, because if you remember in Rogue One, just before he dies, he's hugging Jyn, but he's actually facing the opposite way. And the last thing you see are his eyes open, kind of looking almost like in the direction of Bix and the child, which I think is kind of an interesting.
I don't think that's an accident.
Juxtaposition there.
but the other thing about the ending of this, which I thought was interesting, having watched Rogue One, is just how so much of this happens so quickly now. You come to the understanding, like we don't know, like I'm guessing it's a matter of days, right? But in a matter of days, Luthen finds out about the weapon. Luthen dies. Cassian comes with Melshi and K2SO, saves Kleia, gets back to Yavin, and then leaves for the mission. And it's off to the races at that point. So we're talking about a matter of days from the time they find out about this weapon to the time they find out about the Death Star to the actual then action of going to Scarif and getting the plans to transmitting the plans to getting them to Princess Leia. Like, all of this happens in a matter of days from episode 10 forward.
And then episode 4 takes place over what, the span of a week and a half?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, because Vader's probably hunting that ship down for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of remarkable when you think about the timing, and then the fact that Andor is carrying when you watch Rogue One, not that it was filmed that way, but when you watch it now and you see Andor, you think about him carrying the weight of Luthen's death, of the loss of Bix, of what he's gone through those 2 seasons and how that plays out throughout the movie. And the way that that he gives of himself, the idea that he's this messenger, and he doesn't say it this way, but it's interesting, when he realizes that they can get the plans and transmit them, and have a role in this, that is he fulfilling his purpose now? Like this Force healer had said to him, like, is this his role as the messenger? You kind of think about stuff like that to get some degree of perspective in terms of the Rogue One story. And so, yeah, I know Gilroy did just a masterful job of getting it teed up to, like, right at the moment that the story starts. And then, so really, like, when you think about it, Luthen and Andor die within a couple of days of each other. It's really not that long.
Yeah. And then what is, not to drag this out too much more, but what is Andor thinking when he's looking through the sniper sight at Galen Erso? Because he had Dedra in his sights.
Yeah.
And in some way, I mean, is he thinking like, well, if I'd shot Dedra, would we have gotten the plans to the Death Star? Would we?
Right.
Should I take out this guy? Like, uh-oh.
Sorry, I thought I heard something.
Are you being called to the halls of justice?
No.
But yeah, is that going through his mind? Like, should I take this guy out? Like, what happened last time? Like, maybe I shouldn't, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, excellent storytelling all the way around.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point, because he takes out Tivik, to kind of save himself in the beginning of the movie, and so it's interesting. Like you're saying, like, what's going through his head, and and then you think about too, you don't see them, but Wilman, Vel, you wonder, I wonder about those characters and what they must feel or think, knowing that Andor's gone. They've now lost Luthen and Andor within a span of a couple days, and so do they feel hope? Do they feel despair? Like, it's just interesting to kind of think about what they must be thinking or feeling, given the activity of the last several days. Does it embolden Kleia to become more involved because Andor's gone now? The guy who sacrificed himself to bring her there,
Yeah.
So
then,
no,
like, a week and a half later, you have this pissant kid who's like, "Oh yeah, we used to hit womp rats with this and that." And I was like, "Who is this idiot who's talking about this?"
Cleia's ready to slap the taste out of his mouth.
I'm sorry, what was your name? It doesn't matter what your name is.
Oh my God. I find it funny that you can do that in your house at this time of night.
Oh, I was doing the whisper yell right there. I was not all that loud.
All right.
I'm really hoping my wife is asleep. Kaylin sleeps like a rock. My wife, I'm not so sure.
I think we can go. I mean, I think we've talked about. I listed a bunch of questions here. I think we can maybe save those for the Week in Geek if we haven't, covered them.
Yes,
because I have questions like, how would you rank? Sorry, if you would take the 3 episode arcs, there's 4 of them. How would you rank them?
I think it's a question like how you're going to manage at work tomorrow, but that's just me.
I'm going to stumble my way through it like I do everything else. I want to understand how we've kind of talked a little bit how this enhances Rogue One or our viewing of Rogue One, but where does Andor now sit as compared to other Star Wars content, whether it's movies or TV? Because this is really one of the strongest outings for the franchise. Like Andor is almost kind of like the bar now. It is so good story wise.
It is, but at the same time, I've seen a couple posts of Star Wars fans like, if it doesn't measure up to Andor and Rogue One, and then they quote, they kind of paraphrase, Gilroy, like, what are we even doing? I'm like, oh, dude, just shut up. Like, unless you own Lucasfilm stock, unless you're like, senior VP in charge of whatever, relax, Francis. Like, this is not the end all and be all of your life. Like, just enjoy things. It's okay. And like, yes, I would definitely rank this season of Andor and Rogue One. It would definitely be in my top 5 of overall Star Wars properties, if you will. But at the same time, like, you know what? Just when we were talking about on Wednesday, we were talking about Solo. Like, I kind of need to go back and watch Solo. Like, it was okay. Like, it was a kind of a fun story, and even though it was flawed and all this stuff, like, maybe I missed something. Like, just enjoy crap, man. Like, don't have this thing of like, oh, if it doesn't measure up to this, it's crap. Like, don't turn into the Mike Myers from friggin' SNL. Like, if it's not Scottish, it's crap. Like, just enjoy stuff. Like, this is where we've gotten to in life and in our world, where it's like, if it's not this, then it has to be absolute dog shit. Like, just enjoy stuff. And you know what? If stuff on the internet is frustrating you, take a friggin' walk, like George Carlin once said. Just take a friggin' walk. Doesn't even take a friggin' walk anymore, So I mean, yeah, I will say I do think this is some of the best storytelling in Star Wars. I do feel like this and Rogue One really have elevated Star Wars. Do I think that everything else sucks because this is good? No.
Oh, it's not a question about others sucking. It's just a question about where does it sit in comparison.
Yeah, well, I said that more for the fans at large than for you, because I feel like you're kind of on the same boat as me. Like, even if it's something we don't like it was still fun. It didn't make my life this Grand Canyon of despair.
Yeah.
So that was more. I should have directed that more to the fandom in general. So my apologies, sir. I didn't mean to, besmirch your reputation as a fan.
Well, I have my bona fides to maintain.
Well, yeah, I see you bringing that back on me. That's fine.
Yes, indeed. We will get to these other questions at a later point in time, but I think suffice to say we are both bullish on season 2 and highly would recommend it to those who have not seen it yet. It is just top-notch storytelling all around, and do watch Rogue One afterwards, because the events of even the Gorman massacre, just like so much of season 2 just kind of weighs on your brain as you watch Rogue One, and to be honest, what's kind of funny is there, from episode 4 New Hope, and then we'll wrap up here. When you see that diagram of what they're supposed to do about dropping the bomb, and you see the little digital bomb going into the port and down, and then you see the little explosion. I feel like that kind of is like what episode 10 through Rogue One is. It's really like this fast moving. The bomb has been lit. You've dropped the bomb into the port, and now the chain reaction has started. Like that. I feel like episode 10 to Rogue One is, and then to A New Hope is a chain reaction that is unstoppable, because
I will make one slight amendment, and you tell me if maybe I'm a little closer here.
You're a little not closer. No, go ahead.
Okay, fine. Okay, Dietra. But so I feel if you're going to make that analogy, it's more like Death Star 2, where you've now blown up the core. Now you're just trying to get the hell out. You're trying to get distance from this thing that you started, and this explosion's happening, and now it's like, let's just try and survive.
Yeah.
Let's and not even survive like the entire excursion. Let's just try to make it out of the Death Star. Like we still might get blasted into space dust by all of the other Imperial ships around us, but let's just try and get away from this thing that we just decided to light the fuse on. And let's try and survive this thing, and then we'll see if we can get the next thing, and then the next thing.
Yeah. I can see both. Yes.
Okay.
I can
Fair
see
enough.
both because I mean, the main point of it is just that there's no slowing it down. Like when I watched Rogue One today, I started yesterday and finished it today. And I don't know if why I didn't feel this way or notice it when I watched it for the first time in the theaters. It just has this relentless pace to it. It's just one thing after another. And it's not that there's not a lot of story to it. It's just they don't go deep on a lot. Like, again, Gilroy, he didn't direct it, but he wrote it, co-wrote it. And there's just a efficiency to the way they tell the story. They don't spend a lot of time elaborating on characters. They don't, go deep on a lot of stuff. It keeps moving forward, and they do get a little deep with the Ursos. They do get a little deep with Krennic, but overall it's just this train that's moving and it's not stopping. And that's the part to me that I find interesting.
I would differ in that I feel like because they did such an efficient job of telling you who the characters were and in expressing them through the story, you don't feel like it's a character building thing. Like, no, they were just really fracking efficient in it. Yeah. Like you saw Krennic, and you're like, oh, I know this asshole. Oh, I know this guy. This is like 50% of the people I have worked for in my life. Yes, this is the manager of whatever that I worked for. Got him. I feel like they did such an efficient job of that again, I feel like it was a very symbiotic melding of story and characters, because I don't feel like any of those characters got short shrift, even though we got this whole 2-season exploration of Cassian. Yeah, I felt like I had a pretty good idea of who he was and how conflicted he was. Now I know exactly how conflicted he was and all the trauma he had been through. But you see this dude and you're like, this is a dude who is friggin' hurt. Yeah, but he is also committed. Yeah, and ultimately that's all you need. Yeah, all this is nice, but you can never watch Andor season 1 or 2 and still enjoy the hell out of Rogue One and also have a fairly accurate picture of who Cassian Andor is. Yeah. I mean, fair enough. I'm not 100% disagreeing with you, but I think that they did a really good job in that movie and then just carried that over to kind of the prequel of it.
Yeah, you're disagreeing with me. You know it.
Like 20%. But that's mostly out of just habit.
Yeah. Everyone's got to get their jollies somehow.
Indeed. Well, sir, if we are we suitably ready to wrap up this
episode? I am more than ready to wrap up at this point.
Okay. Then what do you have for and another thing? I think it might be kind of given away in what you have said already.
Rogue One, what's yours? No. So
I should have put on a neck brace. I got whiplash from that one.
No, my end another thing. I was going to do one of the bourbons I bought over the weekend. I'm going to save that for next episode. But no, I watched Rogue One. I hadn't watched it in a little bit, and just it holds up well. It is a solid flick. Watch it after you watch seasons 1 and 2 of Andor. You will watch it differently. It will hit differently in some ways. I mean, not 100%, but there's just a feel to it and a way you watch it that's different now that you have some understanding of what kind of built up to it. And so, so I would highly recommend watching Rogue One on the Disney Plus.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to follow in a similar trajectory with one of my favorite Star Wars movies, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. This is kind of prompted by one of the articles. I can't remember which. I didn't note it down because, well, brand loyal. But talking about how the end of Episode 12 for Andor Season 2 was kind of like one of the most hopeful kind of images of the Star Wars franchise, along with the Broom Kid from The Last Jedi, which I would agree with. It's one of those things that kind of leaves you on this unadulterated hope. Like there's no strings attached to it. Like you just see this and you're like, your heart kind of like even just, it's silly, but even just thinking about that image, picturing it in my mind of Bix holding her child, or even the Broom Kid all of a sudden just like wafting the broom into his hand using the Force, like it just lightened me. I was like, yes, there's hope, even though I'm like, this is a totally fictional universe and we're all screwed here. Oh, well. But still there's hope. But The Last Jedi, I feel, is one of those movies that continues to get hammered on for whatever reason. And I just love it. So go watch that on the Disney Plus.
I highly recommend it as well. It is a phenomenal.
Excellent. Well, thank y'all for tuning in. We certainly appreciate all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation, whatever country you might be dwelling in. It is 1:07 a.m. here on the East Coast, and you're no longer watching Perspectives. You're watching Insomnia at this point. Thank y'all for tuning in, and go to Freedom... Jeez, I can't even talk anymore. FreeRangeIdiocy.com to find all of our episodes. You can download them one by one, or you can get them all at once. You can subscribe to the Podbean app. You can also find us on we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Pandora. If whatever podcast purveyor you have, we're probably there, unless it's some like Georgine's podcast shack or something. I don't know. But just search for Free Range Idiocy. You'll probably find us. You can find us on the YouTube's, Instagram, and Facebook. All of those are at Free Range Idiocy. If you're looking for full video, the full video experience, 1080p HD. We are not in 4K. Nobody needs to see that. Even our families really don't need to see us in 4K.
No.
You can find those on our YouTube channel. You can also find those on Spotify. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. It just makes us happy when the numbers go up. If you have any thoughts, concerns, or questions for us, send those to Tim at freerangeidiocy.com. Thank you, Sabu. And if now I'm about ready to turn this show over to the man who, quite honestly, unequivocally, is the least idiotic member of the show. Granted, it's a very low bar to clear since there's only two of us. But not before I ask him the second most important question in all of human history. The first being, what is hip? The second being, what in the high holy hell did we learn? Actually, it's a two-parter. What in the high holy hell did we learn this episode, and why are we up this late?
We have learned the following, my friend. We have learned that Uncle Todd and the man they call Tim, their stamina to do this show, to stay up this late, is unequaled by, I think, any other podcaster.
Is this where you're going to start talking about virility again? With your... That was quite honestly a little disturbing last week.
Hey, I bring the class to this show.
Quite honestly, you were talking about HR with the whole trigger and the finger thing. I feel like if we had an HR department, I had a case. But unfortunately, we don't have an HR department.
That's exactly right. We have also learned that podcasts are in fact built on hope, and we are the standard bearers, the torch bearers, if you will, of that. We may burn things down, but
I'm going to have to note this down because of the language, but we are all fucked, ladies and gentlemen, if we're the standard bearers. Just say it.
We've also learned Uncle Todd has no faith. No, I'm kidding. We've also learned that Andor Season 2 was just top-notch storytelling, top-notch viewing, and if you have not seen it, do check it out. Check out Season 1 if you haven't seen it. It is top-notch. You'll figure it out by now. We have also learned...
How many times can you use top-notch in this outro?
I don't know. I can figure it out. We've also learned that the man they call Tim can use the phrase top-notch multiple times. It is after midnight here on the east, on the central East Coast.
The Central Coast? How does that work?
The question here isn't who are you, it's where am I?
You're on the coast of Lake Superior.
Also known as Chicagoland. Oh, God. I need to go to bed.
Right next to the river, which is not actually a river. That makes sense.
No, we have learned the man they call Tim can get up at 4:30 in the morning and still be functional at 12:10. I'm actually
really?
4 hours away from being up for 20. Actually, I've been up for 20 hours. Can you believe that crap?
I can, actually.
Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
I'm pretty sure that I forced that on you a couple of times.
Yes, you have.
Back in college.
And we have also learned, I'm trying to remember, was Kaylin's Comedy Corner during this show or the last show?
I think it was this show. Yes, it was, because we were messing up your arrangements.
That's right. Well, that's the other thing we learned, is that Uncle Todd and his family excel at screwing up my arrangements. Good God.
The only thing that was missing with Tay was like for him to be like, do you think you can get me off one time for old time's sake?
Can you get me off the hook? What a great line. Can you get me off the hook, Tom? Oh, my God. Yeah, no kidding. That's all we needed was just, just digitally recreate Abe Vigoda. Just go
meandering through the background.
Go up to Luthen. Can you get him off the hook? So that's what we need. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we have also learned that Kaylin has some very, very good insights about Thunderbolts. And so she shared some very, very good perspectives and some good points. And if you haven't seen Thunderbolts, again, another vehicle that we can fully put our brand and name behind. Not that they want it, but we're putting it behind it nonetheless. And finally,
please don't endorse this. It's like when Ted Kennedy endorsed Bill Clinton, and Bill was like, "I got enough problems of my own, Teddy. Listen, I don't need your help."
Whoa, player.
That's actually close to the truth, considering the two people involved. That was exactly the right wording. Whoa.
And finally, we have also learned that we are somehow able to record in our homes with our family not being bothered by us, and not
don't say that. I'm probably going to hear about this tomorrow. Don't you worry.
All right. Well, with all that being
all
said,
right.
Oh my God. With all that being said,
yes,
one last thing we've learned.
I'm taking the day off tomorrow, so dude, you're
say his name and he will appear. I believe in Joe Henry. I just want to say that. So,
don't have him show up here because I can't deal with the pyro and all that crap going off.
Wait a minute. Trying to do my best Joe Henry right now.
I would do that, but I don't have the wireless headset like you do.
I don't have. Oh no, I'm wired.
You are? Okay. You can see it blends in with the sweatshirt.
It's like super long though. Once again, we have no HR. You have nothing to do.
So do you need extra fabric when you gird? Or?
Okay. With all that being said, we like to close things out here on the range before it hits 12:30. Be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. The range is closed mercifully. That's what we like to say. See ya.
I like a Mussolini.
Oh, thank you, Uncle Corny.
It's like I took the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon. What did you say?
Damn!
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So say we all. So say we all.
It is done.
Is it?
Oh, God. Ah, yes.
Oh, you done did it now.
Oh, yeah.
Chaos, you should have put this one in the vault, man. They not ready. They don't know what's coming,
put
man.
this one to bed is what we need to do. Forget the vault. I need a bed.
Y'all ain't ready for none of this. Your boy's a bad man. Then we invading the streets, make them clap a rapper skirt. They be dropping the heat. Shock the world, now I'm standing alone. I flip fools like them clamshell cellular phones. You can't help but nod your head to the track. The water down rap, we be taking it back. Giving to me straight, ain't no chasing it. Check yourself in the mirror, ain't no facing it. Cause you playing the...
Now get the hell out of here!